Hey there, good morning, and welcome into the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in the air chair today for OC, who is out on assignment. Happy Friday to you. So good to be back in these Broadway Media Studios where I spent so many years. Great to be with you on a Friday today. And we'll have fun for over the next 3 hours or so as we head into the weekend. What a sport. I mean, we don't have a lot going on here in the state of Utah right now, but we have so much on the sports landscape right now. We've got the World Cup beginning in a week. 1 week from today, the United States men's national team kicks off the World Cup at SoFi Stadium against Paraguay. They'll have their final tune-up tomorrow in Chicago against the Germans. And that game will be heard right here on ESPN 700, 12:30 Mountain Time, pregame at noon tomorrow for the United States and Germany from Soldier Field on the banks of Lake Michigan in Chicago. So that's going on right now. Game 2 of the NBA Finals is tonight in San Antonio between the Spurs and the Knickerbockers. We'll talk about that on the program today. We'll also talk about the World Cup on the program today with a guy that's going to be calling tomorrow's matchup in Chicago. He'll be part of the World Cup coverage as well this year for Univision and Telemundo. That is Marcelo Balboa. He'll join us coming up in a bit. But we got Game 2 tonight right here as soon as Spence wraps up later today. 6:30 or so Mountain Time from San Antonio. Game 2, the Knickerbockers and the Spurs. We'll talk a bit about that and the NBA draft coming up a little bit later on with my good friend. I know he was on earlier this week with Sean, but when I'm on the air, it feels like kind of a warm blanket wrapped up around me when I have my good friend of many, many years, Gordon Chiesa, come on. So Gordy will join us today, and we'll preview the Knicks and the Spurs. And I'll tell you what, I said this the other day when I was on with Spence. I never in my life thought I would say that. I have never in my life. I don't know that I've ever rooted for the New York Knicks, but I find myself wildly attracted to this Knicks basketball team. There is something very likable about this New York team. I've always been kind of an anti-New York guy. I just have. The big city, I've never liked the Giants or the Jets. I've hated the Yankees all my life because they broke my heart as a child when they took the Royals down in the playoffs in the late 70s and early 80s. I've never had a rooting interest in a New York team, but as I told Spence the other day when I was on his show with him, I'm rooting for the Knicks. There is something very likable about this New York Knicks team. So we'll talk about that with Gordon Chiesa when he joins us coming up in just a bit on the program. Of course, we're going to talk some college football, University of Utah and Utah football, and big picture college football as well. As we sit 90 days, can you believe it? We're inside of 100. We're 90 days until kickoff. 13 weeks from yesterday. We're inside of 13 weeks now to go until kickoff. The Utes of the Idaho Vandals will kick it off at 7 o'clock on September the 3rd at Rice-Eccles Stadium. I will have the call with you. Stevenson Sylvester will be with me on that broadcast, and Sly will join us a little bit later on in the program today to talk about some off-season questions about Utah football. And I've got a couple for you guys today. It's a Friday. I want to have some fun with you. I don't get to talk to you guys every day like I used to. I miss you sometimes. And so I want to kind of get back with you guys today. And for the first hour or so of the show today, I just want to kind of open it up to you guys and talk about whatever may be on your mind. Maybe it's the college football playoff picture. And we're going to get into that because I've got some thoughts on this. I've talked about it on my podcast. If you don't listen to it, if you haven't added it to your podcast playlist, it's called The Crimson Corner. You can find it. It usually drops every week, Wednesday or so. I do it from my broadcast studio up at the University of Utah, and I usually talk a lot about Utah football, Utah basketball, whatever's going on in the Big 12 and around and impacting the University of Utah. So if you would, do me a solid and add that that podcast to your playlist and add it to the weekly rotation. My goal is to begin to do it moving forward maybe a couple of times a week. Right now it's just been for we started it last fall. You want to walk before you run. You want to crawl before you walk. And I think we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary. That will be in August, and it's been fun. I love doing it. It gives me a chance on a regular basis to be behind the mic like I am right now, which I did for 30 plus years of my radio career. But it's a lot of fun to do. So if you would rate and review me well, if you listen, if you don't, add it to your rotation of podcasts and tell me what you think. Get interactive with me there. But because I'm on the radio today, I would love to get interactive with you guys in the first hour of the show. Anything's wide open. It's a free-for-all Friday here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in for Sean O'Connell today. So anything that's on your mind, it could be Utah football. It could be Big 12 football. It could be BYU football. It could be college football playoff. It could be Jazz basketball. It could be the draft coming up. It could be the NBA playoffs. By the way, the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs have been unbelievable. Game 2 last night. I mean, Carolina needed that win in the worst way. That you don't want to. It doesn't matter what league you're in, where you're at, whatever the play. You don't ever want to go down 2-0 in a playoff, a best-of-7 playoff series. And had Carolina lost last night, they'd have been down 2-0, and it looked for a minute like they might go down and lose, but they rallied. The third period was insane. Vegas, because they're like zombies. They're like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. You cannot kill the Vegas Golden Knights without some of that dragon glass and stab it right in their eye socket. They didn't go quietly last night, but Carolina found a way to win that thing in overtime, and there is nothing, I repeat, nothing better than Stanley Cup playoff overtime hockey. It is absolutely, positively fantastic, and it was last night. And Carolina leveled up the series, and they'll head back out west for Game 3, which, of course, you'll be able to hear right here. ESPN 700, not much has changed. We have always been your destination for all the biggest events in sports, and that has continued. James and the crew here have done a great job maintaining and adding to it. I kind of feel like I've got a little worry. We kind of added hockey right before I left a couple of years. It's weird, by the way. We are coming up on almost the 2-year anniversary right at the end of the month. I think it was the 27th or 28th of June 2 years ago that I left full-time to take my new job up at the University of Utah, which I love. But, but we added the hockey playoffs, right, and they've continued, and now this is a hockey market, and it's awesome. So you've got the NBA Finals. You've got the Stanley Cup Finals. You've got the World Cup, which World Cup qualifier. I don't think, James, are you guys carrying the World Cup?
No, that's so we're a Westwood One affiliate. That's where a lot of ours, besides ESPN Radio, come from. Westwood One, Sports USA is the hockey. None of those, and ESPN obviously doesn't have the radio World Cups. I had a hard time flagging that down, what the radio World Cup is. It could be Fox Sports Radio, maybe Fox TV and Fox Sports Radio has that.
That's exactly what it is. Anyway, I take that. Yeah, I should have remembered that. Really, what they do, I think Fox just basically moves their TV broadcasts over to the radio side of things.
Oh, it's just a simulcast?
Yeah, it's what I've heard that on satellite radio for years. They do that with friendlies and international stuff.
Yeah,
anyway,
Westwood One is your home of U.S. soccer besides the World Cup. They have all the other tournaments.
And that's why you'll hear the quality. You'll hear the World Cup tune-up. I don't call them friendlies. When I called soccer for all those years with Real Salt Lake, sometimes we'd say international friendlies. But if you've called some of those before, there's really nothing friendly about them. And I don't think they'll be overly friendly tomorrow with it being the final tune-up for both the United States and Germany as they get ready for World Cup action. So anyway, everything you need is right here, including Utah football, which begins in 90 days, and we'll talk about that as well. So anything that you guys want to talk about today is fair game. I left some space specifically for a lot of time because, I just have to sit in my office and talk to myself now because I don't do a radio show every day. So anybody that walks by my office up at the Huntsman Center probably thinks I'm nuts and I'm talking to myself. But sometimes I have to fill the dead air. You work in radio for a long time. Dead air is the worst thing you can have. So sometimes I find myself just talking to myself. So today I get to talk to you guys and with our guests that include Gordy Chiesa, Stevenson Sylvester, Marcelo Balboa. And if you're not familiar with Cello was a member of the United States World Cup squads in the early 90s, 94 when they played here in the United States. Cello is a great broadcaster. He had an excellent career in MLS. He now handles some of the Spanish language broadcasting of international soccer, so he'll be part of the World Cup coverage as well. So Cello's going to join us from Chicago because he'll be calling tomorrow's matchup between the United States and Germany. Anyway, those are – there we go. I thought I lost my headphones for a minute. Those are our guests today, but I want to spend some time talking to you. I want to talk about some things that I've kind of kicked around on my podcast the last couple of months. I've got some Utah football questions I'm going to throw your way. I want to get your read on the college football playoff. I'll be honest, despite the fact that I haven't yet been able to call a college football playoff game, I've liked the 12-team format. I've got no real issue with the 12-team format. And if they decided to stay with the 12-team format, I would be okay with any and all that stuff. But it's not going to happen. You guys have seen this. There's been tons of news over the last several weeks. The SEC wants to move it to 16. The Big Ten, seemingly the Big 12, the ACC, Fox Television certainly would want to move it to 24 teams. And I know Sean has talked about this in this space. I know that Spence has talked about it in this space. I know I've talked about it with those guys in this space, but I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you guys about it. So I would just be curious to know where you guys sit on the college football playoff picture, because it's going to change. It's not going to change next year. Next year will still be a 12-team playoff. But maybe as soon as 2027, it could change. Maybe to 16 teams, maybe to 24 teams. Do you guys have a preference on what you would like to see, and why would that be? I'll tell you mine for now. I am not set in – I've never been – I think you learn sometimes as you get older in life that you should not be set in stone or married completely and totally to your opinions. You should let those be somewhat fluid as information flows your way. When I was younger and doing this job in my 20s and 30s and probably even my early 40s, you'd have an opinion, you would come on the air, and you stuck to it. That was a hill you were going to die on. And you would fight with listeners, and you would fight with other media members over your opinion. And I still feel strongly about a lot of things. But what you learn when you get older is the more information you get about particular topics and subjects and whatever it might happen to be, you should allow yourself the ability to change. Maybe you don't completely change an opinion on something, but maybe the more information you get on it, the more you could be swayed a little bit. And that's where I kind of stand with the college football playoff. I thought the 4-team playoff was better than nothing. I thought when the 4-team playoff came in more than a decade ago, I thought it was better than nothing. But I still didn't think it was great, because I didn't think just 2 teams were worthy of playing for a championship when you didn't have a tournament leading up to that. Now, I like the fact that a playoff committee selects it with the help of computers and analytics and advanced data. But I never liked the idea of computers completely and totally selecting things, because I think there's got to be some sort of a human element to it. Just the same way I don't believe that we should completely do away with officials like umpires in sport. Can we use electronics? Can we use computers to help impact and make the game better? Yes, but I don't want to ever take the human element completely away from officiating. The same way I don't want to take the human element away from selecting teams for a college football playoff. So I thought 4 was good, but I didn't think it was the right number. I never really did, but it was a good start. And now for the last couple of years, we've gone to a 12-team playoff in college football. And I think it's been despite the fact that Utah has not played in that 12-team tournament, I think it's been a good addition. I think it's been a good change. I think it's been good for collegiate athletics to have more teams in. And I think that with 12 teams, are you missing a few perhaps? Are there teams that might be left out that might have a chance to play for and advance through the tournament and maybe win a championship? I think there probably are in some years. Last year Notre Dame didn't make the field, and some people thought that was That was terrible. It was the end of the world. I never feel bad for Notre Dame because Notre Dame gets more breaks than most, if not any, or if not all. So I didn't, but maybe Texas was good enough. Maybe BYU was good enough. Maybe Utah was good enough last year, but I was okay with it. Well, now we've got Tony Petitti, the man that runs the Big Ten, wanting to expand this playoff tournament to 24 teams. And he's got a lot of backing on this. The Big 12 coaches unanimously said, yeah, we want 24 teams. The ACC, I don't know if the coaches were unanimous, but the league and their commissioner, Jim Phillips, is backing it. Fox Sports Television, we know. Fox Sports is the reason the Pac-12 doesn't exist the way it used to anymore. I know people say it exists. It's a conference again, but let's be fair. It's a glorified Mountain West Conference. But Fox Sports is one of the biggest drivers in collegiate athletics and in sport. They back the Big Ten. They would like it to change. You want to know why? Because ESPN owns the playoff right now. Fox has nothing to do with the college football playoff. And I don't know financially that ESPN could afford to buy an entire 24-team tournament. I just don't know that they've got the pockets deep enough to do that. So the only people right now that are standing firm on 12 and maybe 16 but not moving to 24 are the SEC, Greg Sankey's league, and I'm not sure that they're unanimous in that, but that you don't see any coaches speaking out against it. That's the one thing about the SEC and Greg Sankey, because he's a good leader of that conference, is you very rarely see anybody stepping out. They have a consensus, and they have one voice there. And, of course, the other party that doesn't want to see the playoff expand from 12 right now is ESPN and ABC, because they own it. And if it expands further out, that means more money, higher rights fees, and I'm not sure that and I'm not sure, frankly, that college football would want that, because I think when you put things out to bid, the number becomes higher. Maybe Fox comes into that then. Maybe Netflix or Prime. We've seen them step in with the NFL, and they've got deeper pockets than both Fox and ESPN do combined. But I would be very curious where you guys, as college football fans, fall on this. Where do you say you would like to see the college football playoff go? I'm not so up in the night, or I'm not so Pollyanna to think that it's not going to change. It will not stay at 12. Finances and where things are in collegiate athletics and the need for more and more money, that's what drives all of this. That's why it went from 4 to 12. That's why 12 is a short-term fix. It's going to expand again, and it may end up at 24 immediately. You may double the field and go from 12 teams to 24. But I would be very curious to hear from you guys today to let me know where you stand on this particular issue. As college, and I know just about everybody listening to me talk right now is probably a college football fan, whether you're a Utah fan, a BYU fan, a Utah State fan, maybe you're a USC, maybe you're the Ohio State University fan, whatever. Or maybe you just like college football. And that's understandable too. Maybe you didn't go to a school that played a lot of football. Maybe you went to Gonzaga and you didn't have any college football, but you love college football. I know lots of people like that went to smaller colleges that didn't have football. But I bet you've got an opinion on this. I'm just guessing that you've got a read on this. So I'd love to hear from you today. The text line is, as you know, it's always open. And it will be open all day long today for you. And I set the first hour aside because I don't get to have interaction with you guys every day to talk about this and some Utah football stuff as well. 877-353-0700 is your text line. That's, again, 877-353-0700 to get you in and on board the Sean O'Connell Show today. Bill Riley filling in for OC. And you tell me, which of the three formats do you prefer? The 12, we're not going to say, oh, I wish we would go back to 4, because that's not realistic. That is never happening. That toothpaste is out of the tube. That genie has left the bottle. It ain't ever happening. So you've got the 12 teams, stand pat, stand put. This is a great format. I like it. Then you've got the 16-team playoff, which I'm going to confess to you guys right now, I'm a fan of. And I'll tell you why in just a second. Or you've got the 24-team playoff, which includes a lot more schools, which means a lot more. Now, the only thing I will say about the 24-team playoff, I understand why people are pitching it because it's money. You're going to go from $700 million is what the tournament generates right now to probably closer to $2 billion. That's a lot of money. And trust me when I say this, there is not a school out there, from the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor, that couldn't use more money in their coffers. Everybody needs it. But I will tell you this, I am a fan if I had to choose between those three options. I'm a fan of the 16-team playoff, and I always have been. You can go back to the days where Kyle Whittingham and I used to talk about this on his show and when he would join me on this show. If you go to a playoff, and I think 1AA did it for the longest time, they've now expanded to 24 themselves. But Division II, Division III, they do 16-team playoffs. Here's why I like the 16-team playoff if we're leaving the 12-team format. One, you keep conference championship games. You can still have the conference championship games if you want to. Not every league does, but if you want to, you can. And I think there's a value in that, in winning your conference. So I like the idea. I do. I like conference championship weekend. Make it that first weekend in December, where it is right now. The other thing I like about a 16-team playoff, which is my choice if we were doing it, you can't lose more than 2 games in the regular season and make the playoff. Yeah, you're going to expand the field just a little bit, but I think if you have 3 losses, it's going to be really difficult. 3 regular season losses. You might be able to sneak in if you got to your conference championship game and lost it, depending on what your resume looked like. But if you have more than 2 regular season games that you lose, you're not going to make the playoffs. And I like that. It's 4 rounds. It starts the second week in December, and it ends the second week of January. Do you know when the conference, I believe that the NCAA, the championship game this year is going to be played almost into late January this year. I think it's somewhere around January 20th, 21st. James might be able to look that up. It's late this year. That's too long for college football. And you're going head-to-head with the NFL and their playoffs, and that's a losing proposition because we know the NFL wins everything that it goes up against. But I think that's right. A month-long tournament with 4 rounds. Okay, I was right about that. It's even later. James says January 25th is when the college football championship game is going to be. That's January 25th? What are we doing? It's too late. And that's with a 12-team playoff this year. That's not even with a 24-team. Anyway, okay. The other thing you get with a 16-team playoff, every matchup's a top tier, in theory. You expand to 24, you're allowing some teams in, and I get it, that's great. But some of those early round matchups are not going to be great matchups. They're just not. And you still increase the coffers. You keep those conference championship games. And I think your coffers are going to increase from roughly $700 million, you're probably going to go over $1 billion, which is not chump change. Yeah, it may not be the $2 billion you get to with 24 teams. But if you're at 1.2, 1.3, $1.4 billion, you're almost doubling where you are now, and that's pretty good. By the way, I ran an AI sim this morning, and yeah, last season, a 16-team playoff would have included both Utah and BYU last year. Utah would have drawn Indiana in the first round at Indiana. BYU would have drawn Tulane, if you can believe that, which would have been good for BYU because that would have been a wild matchup, though, because it would have been the BYU Jew, the old Jake Ratzlaff, going up against the team that said they didn't want him anymore, which would have been an interesting storyline. But anyway, in a 24-team playoff last year, Michigan would have been at Utah in round number 1. How about the symmetry of that now? And Houston would have been at BYU in round number 1 for the on-campus games. So anyway, I know there's advantages to all. There's drawbacks to all as well. But if I had my choice in the big picture of it all, I would say give me a 16-team playoff, and let's go from there. See where it goes. Maybe eventually – I just hate the idea – we've only been at 12 for 2 years, and I think 12's been good. But to go from 4 teams 3 years ago to 24 teams, let's just say 5 years later, just seems like a pretty big jump to me. I don't mind change. I know a lot of people don't like change. I don't mind change. Change doesn't bother me. I've learned to roll with the punches over the years. That's the other advantage of getting old. When you get old, you don't necessarily like change, but you understand change happens. That just feels like an extreme change to me. Eventually, maybe you get to 24, but let's see how 16 works first. And if we're still in the dire financial straits we are around the country and everybody needs that money still, well then, bump that field 8 more teams up, go from 16 to 24. Trust me, I would love the college football playoff game. And if the 24-team field had been in effect for the last 10 or 15 years, Utah would have been in the tournament 8 times. A 24-team playoff, Utah would have made the playoff 8. That would have led the Big 12 conference. That would have probably come close to leading the Pac-12 conference as well. But it hasn't. And, yeah, I do like more access. But to be very fair, 16 teams feels like about the very edge. What are we trying to do with this tournament? I know we're trying to accomplish a lot of different things. But ultimately, we're trying to give access to people that have a legitimate chance to win the tournament, right? And make money at the same time. I just really don't believe there's going to be many teams beyond the field of 16 that have a real legitimate chance of winning a national championship. Could you have a Cinderella? Maybe. But how far is that Cinderella going to go? Are you going to win 4 rounds? Probably not likely if your team 15 or if your team's 17, 18, 19, 21, 2, 3, and 4. But I would say anybody in the top 16 would have a decent chance of at least advancing multiple rounds, if not winning it all. But you guys tell me what you think. 877-353-0700. There are no wrong answers here. There are some answers that may be more right than others. But there are no wrong answers. We'll get into some other stuff, too. I've got some Utah football questions to get into as well. It's a Friday. It's a free-for-all Friday on the Sean O'Connell Show. I'm Bill Riley sitting in today from the downtown Broadway Media Studios. Good to have you in. We'll read some of your text messages and hear from you guys when we get back on the other side, right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Riley sitting in for O'Connell today on a free-for-all Friday here. Good to be back in the air chair with you today. Text line's open. I left the first hour of this show pretty wide open just so we could chat a little bit. This college football playoff stuff has been gaining more and more momentum in recent weeks since all the different conference meetings from the SEC to the Big Ten to the ACC to the Big 12 have taken place, and there's definitive momentum. It's going to change. Not going to change this year. Still be a 12-team playoff this year, but maybe as soon as next year. And here's your other problem, too. You've got television contracts that are in place with this. You're going to have to rework those television contracts. And I'm not legalese enough to know, but that's not easy to unwind. But I'm just simply asking the question today, if you had your druthers, which format do you like best as a college football fan? Knowing that most of you are either Utah or BYU fans listening in, and your team hasn't made the playoff yet, but they would have made it last year with a 16 or 24-team playoff, which would you prefer, the 12-team format, the 16-team format, the 24-team format? I made my case for the 16. That's where I stand. As I said, it is not set in stone with me that it's got to be 16 forever. But I would like to see that as the next logical step if they do decide to change it. I'm not so up in the night that I don't think that it's going to eventually probably get to 24 because of money, but I'd just like to see how it functions at 16 and if the revenue generated and more importantly, the football that is played, you don't want to expand. And again, I don't know what would happen here. I just feel like the television with 12 has been outstanding. And I think with 16 adding 4 more teams, it would be too. But I don't want to get to the point where you get some of those matchups in the early round of the playoffs that are good, but they don't really move the needle enough, or we have too much of it. I don't know if that's even possible. Is it possible to have too much college football in December? Because, again, we have those couple of weeks in mid-December after championship weekend. The end of the NFL season's coming. But we don't have any real meaningful games, especially now, till really very end of December, early January, because all those bowl games we all used to love when we were younger, at least me, when bowl games really, really meant something, those have kind of fallen to the wayside. They're just kind of background noise now. So if you could plug some playoff games in there, I think it would be good. But what's the right number in your mind? 877-353-0700. That's the text number to get in and on board today here on the Sean O'Connell Show. 877-353-0700. And we'll read some of those text messages right now for you. I've got some Utah football stuff we'll get into coming up in just a bit, but I wanted to get your read on this first to kind of see where you guys are. I don't have that daily line to you. I still have the finger on the pulse, but not quite like it used to be. That's why I wanted to talk to you guys about it today. Jared says, what do you think will be the biggest difference between the Scally and Whittingham eras? I don't know that yet. The culture hasn't changed at Utah. I'm up there all the time. A little bit, as I've said here in this space and on my podcast and other stuff, there's a different kind of an energy around Morgan and the program right now than maybe there was the last couple of years, and that's not a bad thing. And that's not a judgment on either of the energies. But I don't know yet. I think that has to play out. I think the culture is very much the same. Stylistically, I'm anxious to see what Kevin McGiven does with the offense, but I don't know that there's going to be a huge shift. I really don't. So we'll see. We'll find out this fall when things kick off. 90 days from today, by the way, against the Idaho Vandals. Text message in from Easton. Easton says, hey, Bill, is this the year Utah gets back on track and beats the team down south? If so, why? Well, I hope so. But I thought that they would do that last year. I did. I thought they were the better team going into Provo last year, and it proved that BYU was the better team because they didn't beat themselves, and Utah beat themselves last year. Reasons I would like their chances this year, they're at home for one. I don't know. I've never felt like home field was a huge advantage, but I think it's a small advantage for you playing in your stadium with your fans there. So I think that's an edge. I think Devin Dampier is a dynamic player, and back for his senior year, so I think that's an advantage. I think the wide receiving core is better than it's been, maybe deeper than it's been in my almost 18 years of being the voice of the Utes, so I like that. But it's always a close game, and BYU's good, and they return a ton from last year's team as well. So I gave you a few reasons why it could happen. Let's see how some of the games play. I think the schedule leading up to it's very favorable for Utah as well. It's not a murderer's row for the Utes really until November, and then it becomes tough. You've got BYU, Arizona, and TCU in 3 straight weeks in November. That's not an easy stretch. But there is a world where Utah is undefeated going into the BYU game. So we'll see what happens, Easton. I appreciate it. This text in from Will today at 877-353-0700. Will says, hey, Bill, Jazz and Mammoth are rolling. Well, are the Jazz rolling? Let's pump the brakes on that. This might be the turnaround off season for the Jazz. I think there's reasons to be optimistic about the Jazz being a lot better next year. But I'm not going to say they're rolling. Mammoth rolling, playoff team. Took the Golden Knights, who might win the Cup, to almost the very end. Utah football just around the corner. MLB is coming, and I get to listen to you today. Life is great. Thank you. I appreciate that, Will. Life is great. It really is. Appreciate every single day you get. That's my motto. This one in from Alan today. Alan says, hey, I like 24. They have everyone start week 0 and eliminate conference championships. Play all through December with a higher seed home teams, then wrap it up in the first week of January. That would have to be the game plan, and I think you're going to begin to see college football. What's week 0 now is probably going to be coming, whether they eliminate conference championship games or not. I think week 0 will soon be becoming week 1 anyway. But there's a chance that could happen, Alan. I appreciate the text message. 877-353-0700. Texter 6227 says, hey, Bill, how about a 24-team playoff? It's good with me. Gives the Utes a better chance to make the playoffs and more football for us to watch. Sounds like a win-win to me. Yeah, but to be fair, 16 would give the Utes a better chance to also make the playoffs. I don't like the idea of watering down what's arguably the best sports season in sport in the United States. NFL and college football are the best sports season for me. Football season in general is the best sports season. I understand the economic ramifications of all of it, but if we're just talking specifically and purely about football, I like the 16-team playoff myself. Texter 2560 says, hey, Bill, I'd like to see the 16-team playoff. Conference champs are guaranteed a home game. 24 is too many. I don't want to see an 8-4 SEC team make it. I'm with you on that. 24 it feels like a really big leap for me, doubling the field. I understand why it might go there. But the one thing I will say about Petiti and his plan for 24 and what I don't like is, and they haven't talked as much about this recently as they did, say, last year, but I don't like the guarantees. And when I say guarantees, I don't like the SEC getting 6 guaranteed teams in. I don't like the Big Ten getting 6 guaranteed teams in. I don't want the Big 12, the Big 12 and the ACC are not getting those same 6. Because that would be the entire field. They're giving 3 to the Big 12 and maybe 3. At least these are the numbers that have been kicked around. Nothing's locked in. It's not, again, these are just proposals. And then, there would be 6 more at-large teams after that, which, by the way, could still be more SEC and more Big Ten teams. So, in theory, you might have 8 SEC teams, 8 Big Ten teams, 3 Big 12, 3 ACC, and maybe 3 group of 5s or non-power schools, which, by the way, I'm not opposed to. I thought last year James Madison and Tulane, they were outclassed. It showed, and that was in a 12-team field. I think the best group of 5 team gets an entrance. I do. But I don't think you should have 2 in there unless they meet a certain criteria. Being ranked in the top 25 is not enough for me because they don't play the same schedule week in and week out. If you hit a threshold of saying you're a top 16 or a top 15 team, okay. But I don't want some group of 5 team that went 11-1 and snuck in at the end of the top. They're ranked 24th or 25th to get into that field because they've got no chance because they may have played one ranked team, maybe didn't play any ranked teams all year long. I think one group of 5 team absolutely should be in that field, and if there's more than one, they have to meet a certain threshold to be there. Because this tournament isn't always just about access, it's about getting the best teams. So, but back to my point, I don't like the idea of the guarantee. I don't like the idea of half the field, 2/3 of the field being Big Ten and SEC schools with those guarantees. I want the best teams in there. If that's the way it works out in a given year, I'm okay with that. If 16 of the 24 best teams in a given year are from the SEC and the Big Ten, good. But they have to earn their way in. That's why you have a committee. That's why the college football committee has been put together. Is their work harder? Yeah, it is. But guess what? Selecting 68 teams is not easy either because there's only 30 auto bids, 28, 31, 32 auto bids in college basketball. You still have to pick another 36 teams. Now it's going to be more than that because we're up to 72 or 76. So, yeah, is it going to be harder work for the committee? Yes. But my bigger point is I want the best. If we go to 24 teams or 16, whatever that number is, I want the best teams in there, regardless of where their conference affiliation happens to lie. And if the Big 12 only has 1 or 2 good teams in a given year, well, then that's how it goes. League's got to be good enough. Competition's got to be good enough. Let's get a couple more in, then we'll grab a break. Text line's open, by the way, all day long to you guys. We'll have Gordy a little bit later. We'll have Sly joining us a little bit later. We'll have Marcelo Balboa joining us, talk a little World Cup a little bit later as well. Galen sends this one in. Galen says, hey, I think they should go to a 16-team playoff first. Going to 24 would be too much of a jump for right now. I also don't want to see the conference championship games go away. I'm kind of that way too. There's something about conference championship weekend and having the best 2 teams in a given conference in a given year play those. Now, some schools will say, well, I don't want to lose my opportunity to make the playoff because I lost in my conference championship game. I get that. But it would also give you maybe a chance to play your way in if you're on the bubble to that conference, to the playoffs. So. And having covered conference championship, having broadcast 2 Pac-12, I've broadcast, 4 Pac-12 championship games for Utah, called 2 wins. Cover the SEC championship a number of times. Those are fun, man. Those are fun weekends. You guys, a lot of you guys went. BYU fans got a chance to go to Dallas last year. The game wasn't great, but how fun was the weekend leading up to it? Utah fans know. Whether it was over in Levi Stadium or whether it was down in Vegas, those were fun weekends. I'd hate to see those go away. Sam says, hey, Bill, 16-team format is the cleanest, best choice. But if there are only no auto bids for the Big Ten and the SEC, unfortunately, I don't think these conferences are going to concede on this. Well, they haven't talked about auto bids with the 16 as much as they have with the 24. Because the Big Ten's only pushing the 24. They're not pushing the 16. It's always funny to me, for those of us that have played sport and covered it, that when you see those that work in it and live it day in and day out, coaches and administrators, where they don't necessarily want the results on the field to be the determining factor. They want where you happen to live to be the factor. I've never quite understood that. 877-353-0700. Get you in and on board today. Which of the college football playoff formats do you support most? The 12, the 16, or the 24? As I said at the top, I think we're probably steaming toward 24 at some point. Maybe a lot sooner than later. But just from a football standpoint, and monetarily too, I love the idea of going from 12 to 16. But I'd love to hear from you guys today. We're going to talk some Utah football coming up a little bit. 90 days until kickoff. And anything that's on your mind is fair game today. It could be college football playoff. It could be the Utes. It could be the Cougars. It could be the Jazz draft. It could be World Cup. It could be Mammoth hockey, playoffs, whatever that might happen to be. By the way, I didn't love the two teams in it, but I did love watching the college softball World Series. I love college softball. I love the fact that I get to broadcast Amy Hogue's team for ESPN+. I remember it was 3 years ago where I got to broadcast live on these very airwaves from the college softball World Series when Utah qualified after winning their super regional. I love softball. Pro softball, by the way, coming to Salt Lake City. The AUSL is here. There's a franchise. The Talons live here. They're going to start playing here in less than a month. So if you love the best of the best, I mean, Utah had great, and the Big 12 was great this year, but if you want to see the best softball players in the world playing, they're going to be here in Salt Lake City later this year. So that should be fun. Anyway, we'll get some more of your text messages. Got a leaderboard update. They're playing a Jacks tournament this weekend, the Memorial. Give you an update on that coming up as well, all right here on the Sean O'Connell Show on a Friday. Bill Riley sitting in on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Riles in today for OC, who's out on assignment. Be back next week. Appreciate him letting me sit in. Good to be with you guys today. Gordy's going to come up at about 12:30. We'll preview tonight's game 2 between the Spurs and the Knickerbockers, which you can hear right here when Spence wraps up later today at 6 o'clock right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Home are your NBA Finals. And then, of course, Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final tomorrow night at 5:30. Right, tomorrow will be a busy day, by the way. The U.S. men's national team against Germany at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. And then tomorrow night, Game 3 between the Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes. Right here on your home of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. It's such a crazy busy time. I've got the TV on here in the studio. Roland Garros is going on. The French Open rolls in Paris right now. PGA Tour, they're in Muirfield Village, Dublin, Ohio, just outside of Columbus. Jack's Tournament, the Memorial. Time for a leaderboard update brought to you by our friends at Uinta Golf. Your round 2 leader as they head toward the weekend is Ryan Garrard. He's at 8 under par, 3 under for the day today, and he's in the clubhouse with a one-shot lead over JT Poston, who's at 7 under par. Wyndham Clark at 6 under par. Tommy Fleetwood at 5 under par. Sam Burns and J.J. Spahn at 4 under par. And Salt Lake's very own Tony Finau, who's not had much to speak of this year so far. Tony's at even par. He had a rough round today. He was +2 for his round today. So he's at +2 even and 8 shots back. We'll give you another leaderboard update a little bit later on. Leaderboard updates brought to you by the good folks at Uinta Golf here on the Sean O'Connell Show. We have been talking about the college football playoff, which is great. We love it. 12 teams. But it's not going to be 12 teams forever. That much we know. It's going to be changing because times, they are a-changing. The only certainty in life is change. I'll stop with those now. I've been asking you guys which format you like the best. Which format you would like to see college football move to next if you had your druthers. 877-353-0700 gets you in and on board today. This text message says, Bill, people always say the FCS format is perfect, but it ends up being a lot of blowouts in the first round. Sean mentioned the other week the SEC might be against 24 teams because the ratings suck for the early FCS rounds, and they don't want a repeat of that. I don't know that that's why they would necessarily be against it. They are partners with ESPN. ESPN would be against it because they have a monopoly on the college football playoff right now. And if it expanded to 16, maybe even 24 for sure, ESPN wouldn't be able to keep it all for themselves. And I think the SEC in some ways might be being good partners right there. Text message 3869 says, hey, Bill, Indiana's success seems actually achievable for a program like Utah. Do you see that as a possibility ever? Absolutely. Utah is in the mix. You have to have a number of things all come together for you. You have to have good leadership, good coaching, good support, good finances. Utah has all of that. So, yes, Indiana is – don't expect to see an Indiana every single year, but Indiana is a blueprint for what non-traditional blue blood programs can do when everything comes together at the right time. 877-353-0700. Text message, 8526. Hey, Bill, is there hope for Utah basketball this year? Of course there's hope. Go back to one of my favorite movies of all time, Shawshank Redemption. What did Andy say to Red? Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. Utah basketball is going to be a lot better this year. It was a rough first year for Alex Jensen. No doubt about it. There's no sugarcoating 2-16 in league play. They have done a very good job of retooling the roster. I'm not ready to sit here today and make some grand prediction of where they're going to finish or what their end-of-year results are going to be. But I'm going to tell you this right now. They will not be 16th in the Big 12 this year. They will be markedly better and markedly more competitive every single night. The roster is not set in stone yet, but it's pretty set. And what they've been able to do right now is improve it a great deal. They had a full year of seeing what it needed to be and roster building and construction with Alex and his staff and Wes Wilcox. So, yes, there is hope for Utah basketball this year. We'll have more on that when we see what the final roster looks like. But I think they're going to be much better and much more competitive this year. Text message, hey, Bill. What do you see as the future for bowl games outside of the playoff designated bowls? That's from Bill. Thank you, Bill. Great to have you fill in now and again. I have a pristine Call 700 Utes t-shirt you gave me when Real Salt Lake opened that stadium in San. Well, I'm glad you still have that. That is a collector's item of sorts. Wear it proudly, or at least display it proudly wherever it might be. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what the long-term future for bowl games are. I don't think that they will completely go away because, again, you're not going to – not everybody's making the college football playoff. But have the bowls in recent years been lessened? Their importance and their interest, yes, they have. They have. They're not the same as it was 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. Will all the bowls continue to be in existence? I would be surprised if that happens, but I can't sit here today and tell you which bowls will stay and which bowls will go. But the importance of the bowl game, it just isn't what it used to be. Some bowl games are still great to go to, but some of the ones that used to be great are just okay. So I don't think that they're all going to go away, but the bowl games as we know them, what they have been and what they are now, will probably likely change the same way the college football playoff changes as well. All right, hour one is done. It flew by. Thanks for your text messages. We'll read some more of those coming up in hour number two. I'll have a few Utah football questions for you as well to get into and some few thoughts on that. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe to my podcast, The Crimson Corner. It comes out every Wednesday, occasionally, depending on a guest. Might come out on a Thursday, but would love to have you do that. I talk about a lot of these Utah football questions there on a week in and week out basis. So we'll get to some of that coming up. Gordy's going to join us in the noontime hour as well. And then in the 1 o'clock hour, Sly will come by for a little Utah football and Big 12 football talk, and Marcelo Balboa as well, all on a Friday. Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in here on Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Still not sure how comfortable I am with this segment, but it is time for the Daily Dump presented by the good folks at Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Bronco fans, not good news for you today. Hey, I didn't have good news a few weeks ago when Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice got thrown in jail because he couldn't not smoke some weed when he was on probation. Well, Denver Broncos outside linebacker Jonathan Cooper's been arrested on domestic violence charges. Cooper was held on suspicion of 2 counts of domestic violence, 1 count of criminal mischief in Douglas County jail records say on Friday. Jail records listed hearings for Friday and Monday. Broncos said they're aware of the matter and are gathering more information. 7th-round pick out of Ohio State 5 years ago, entering his 6th season. Started every game since 2023 for the Broncos. He's a pretty key part to what they do, and he's dealing with some issues that no team or no fan base ever wants to see their star players deal with. Super Regional weekend in college baseball going on right now. The first of the Super Regionals a Big 12 team is hosting right now. The West Virginia Mountaineers in the 7th inning, leading Cal Poly, the Mustangs, 8-1 in Morgantown. That's the first of the 16 Super Regionals that are going on this weekend in college baseball. Another Big 12 school, my alma mater, hosting one beginning tomorrow. Kansas, which is one of the real surprise teams the last couple of years in college baseball, is hosting a Super Regional in Lawrence on Saturday, Sunday, and perhaps Monday, depending on how the results go with that. And a death today in the world of NASCAR. Not an unexpected death like we had with Kyle Busch a couple of weeks ago, but Hall of Fame driver Ned Jarrett died at age 93 today. So Ned Jarrett passes away at age 93. And one other NFL note for you, it looks like the Bears are edging closer to their move to Northwest Indiana. They had bought space up in Arlington Park, north of Chicago, and people thought they'd go in where the old racetrack was, but more and more, and apparently they took another step closer today to perhaps a move to Northwest Indiana. Somewhere, my good friend Steve Klauke is rolling his eyes and saying, I cannot believe the Chicago Bears would consider a move to Northwest Indiana. So that is your Daily Dump today, presented by Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling here on the Sean O'Connell Show. I mentioned at the top of the show today, we are 90 days until kickoff. Utah and Idaho kick things off 90 days from today at Rice-Eccles Stadium at 7 o'clock, which means pregame will begin here roughly at about 3 o'clock that afternoon. 2 hours of ESPN 700 pregame, 2 hours of me and my broadcast crew doing some pregame at Rice-Eccles Stadium before the Utes kick it off with the Idaho Vandals. I have talked a ton of Utah football on these airwaves over the years. I have talked a ton of Utah football with Spence and Sean on these airwaves the last number of months. On my podcast, The Crimson Corner, I have talked a ton of Utah football. And I think, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I am very bullish on this Utah football team this year. I believe Utah football will have a very good season this year. I think there's plenty of talent in place. I think that this team is a 9-3, 10-2 type of a football team. I say that because I think the schedule sets up very well. I think the coaching staff, the transition will be very smooth for Morgan Scalley and his team. And I think there's a lot of returning talent, especially on the offensive side, where you've got, obviously, your starting quarterback, your backup quarterback, your starting tailback. You've got an upgraded wide receiver room. Questions? Yeah, there are questions that still remain. I have been asking questions of you, if you listen to the Crimson Corner, and I'll throw a couple of it at you guys today regarding Utah football. The first question I asked on my podcast a week ago, and I'm asking one of these kind of type of questions every week leading up to the start of the season. The question that I asked a week ago was, do you believe this is the year that Utah will have a 1,000-yard wide receiver? The Utes have not had a 1,000-yard wide receiver since a guy by the name of Drez Anderson did it 13 years ago. 13 years ago. We've talked about it a lot. They came close one year when Darren Carrington was here for his 1 year from Oregon, but Darren came up just short. Had he played a full season, he probably would have gotten it, but he didn't. So Utah's gone 13 years. They've got guys that are capable of doing it. Guys like Braden Pagan. Guys like Kyrie Scholes. Larry Simmons. Maybe there's a guy like Dadrian Zipper or Ricky Johnson, the kid transferring in from Mississippi State with Chad Bumpus. They've got an offensive coordinator that likes to take shots down the field. Kevin McGivern does. And they've got an experienced quarterback. Could this be the year Utah gets a 1,000-yard wide receiver? Feel free to hit me up on the text line and tell me what you think. Then this week on my podcast, The Crimson Corner, which dropped the other day, special guest this week, Clark Phillips, former University of Utah All-American corner, now Atlanta Falcon. I talked to Clark on my podcast this week. I also posed the question, not to Clark, but to listeners, as I will to you right now. Will Utah and that Utah defense have a double-digit sack guy this year? They did a year ago, John Henry Daly. John Henry Daly was on his way. He was already an All-American. He missed the last game and a half when he tore his Achilles, but he had 11 and a half sacks last year in just 10 and a half games. 2 years before that, Jonah Ellis had 12 sacks. Go a little further back, Mika Tafua, Bradley and Nye. Utah's had some guys. But do they have that guy this year? Is there a guy on that roster that will get Utah double-digit sacks this year? Cash Dillon, young man from Corner Canyon High School, kind of began to really show some stuff. Like, remember last year, you had John Henry Daly, you had Logan Fano. Those were two guys that were your starters. Everybody else, like Lance Holtzclaw, who's back, who, by the way, just did an amazing job in front of the Senate, in front of the House the other day, presenting on behalf of student-athletes in the question of a lot of college football questions that were up on Capitol Hill. Lance Holtzclaw did an amazing job. He's going to be probably one of your starters at corner or at end, an edge. Cash Dillon, probably that guy. Lance didn't have big sack numbers, had good pressure numbers, but again, he was in a backup role last year. He was in a reserve role, a rotational role. Wasn't a starter till the end of the year. Same thing with Cash Dillon, but we saw some stuff. They're bringing a guy from North Texas who had a really good year, solid year, and had a really good spring, Ethan Day. There might be some other guys in that rotation as well, but do you see Utah this year having a double-digit sack guy? It's another Utah football question you can feel free to respond to on the text line at 877-353-0700. They're good and interesting questions. Nobody's going to know till it plays out. My answer to both of those questions, at least right now, is probably no. On the wide receiver side of it, it's probably because of the depth of talent that's in that room. If Braden Pagan was the only guy there and then you had a bunch of Jags, just a guy, that's what Jag means, just a guy, I'd say, yeah, he's going to be the guy that's targeted. But as I just highlighted, I think there's 4 or 5 wide receivers, plus you've got some tight ends like Hunter Andrews and backs out of the backfield like Wayshawn Parker and Daniel Bray, who can all catch the football. I'm just not sure there's going to be enough receptions for anybody to quite get there. I think Braden Pagan might have a year similar to what he had last year production-wise at Utah State, which was really good. He was over 900 yards, just shy of 1,000, and I think he had 5 touchdowns. Kyrie Scholes, same thing. He had a really good year last year at San Jose State, was over 700 yards. Because there's so many guys and so many guys that can do things, I'm not sure if anybody's going to get 75 or 80 catches. And that's kind of the number you've got to have if you want to have 1,000. You got to be somewhere in that 70 to 80 catch range to get, and I'm not sure if anybody will quite have that. So I think it'll be a very productive room this year. I think one of the other questions that will be asked on my podcast at some point in time is going to be, Does Devin Dampier throw for 3,500 yards this year? Because when you have a deep wide receiver room, 5, 6, 7 guys that can catch passes, you're going to have to throw for a lot of yards for somebody to get 1,000. And we also know that Morgan Scalley, much like his predecessor, believes in physicality in football, and they've got 2 really good, maybe 3 really good running backs. So, a couple of questions for you to kind of sound off on today. But back to my point at the top, I think Utah's going to have a really good year this year. As I've said on these airwaves, I think there's tiers of Big 12 football right now. I think Tier 1 of Utah of Big 12 football includes Utah, BYU, and Texas Tech. In fact, I think those 3 teams are pretty tightly grouped. I think those 3 teams go anywhere from about 12 to 20. You could shake them up and put a – Tech's got some questions, but as much as they have questions at quarterback, and they do because of the Sorsby situation, they got a lot of talent. Their running back room might be the best running back room in college football if the USC kid comes back healthy this year. With Williams – and others, they're going to be good. And I'm telling you, Will Hammond is really good. Now, he's probably not going to be ready to play, I don't think. All the reports coming out of Lubbock say second, third game, he's probably back, maybe fourth game. He might miss 2 or 3 games as he rehabs that knee. But Utah fans got a real good look at Will Hammond last year and what he could do. He was the reason why Texas Tech beat Utah last year. It was not Baron Morton. Baron Morton was not having a good game. Utah's defense was right there. And then Will Hammond used his legs and a little bit of his arm. And I think that Utah defense got a little tired in the fourth quarter last year because the offense was pretty ineffective in that game. So, be interesting to see. And BYU is going to be good again, too. Bear Bachmeier, L.J. Martin. My big questions for BYU are loss of Jay Hill. Jay Hill, we know, was very important to what they did defensively. It'll be first time for Kelly Papinga calling a defense, though he's been on that staff. But Jay Hill was a big part of it. And who are the playmakers in the pass game? You lost Chase Roberts to the NFL. You lost Cody Hagan to medical retirement a week or 2 ago, and then obviously we know what's going on with the other wide receiver who's dealing with off-field legal issues. Who are the pass catchers? Who helps Bear Bachmeier? And obviously the guy that was a big part of it last year, too, Carson Ryan's gone now, too, tight end. So who become those weapons for him? We know that L.J. Martin can run it, and Bear Bachmeier's a good weapon, too, but those were 3 pretty big parts of what they did last year in the pass game. But I think that top tier is definitively, for me, Texas Tech, BYU, and Utah. That second tier, they're not far behind. Houston, Arizona, and TCU. And Utah sees all 3 of those schools. 2 of them on the road. 2 of them back-to-back. You see Arizona and TCU back-to-back in November. So I think the league's going to be really good, but I like Utah's chances. But I think it could be one of those years, although I will say this, Texas Tech's schedule might be the easiest schedule of any of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league. They don't have to play Utah or BYU in the regular season. So we'll see what happens. We'll talk more about that when Sly joins us coming up in a bit here on the program. 877-353-0700. Text line to join the program today. Charles says, hey, Bill, conference championship games are useless. And as often as they're or not, they're rematches from the regular season. I say expand to 24 teams and get rid. Well, he says expand to 2014 teams. That would be a lot. I'm pretty sure you mean 24, Charles. And get rid of the league championship games. If they go to 24, the league championship games will likely go bye-bye. Texter 7606 says, hey, Bill. 16 is the best format. Anytime the SEC and Big Ten are demanding that they have to have automatic bids only shows how elitist they consider themselves to be. With 16, nobody gets a bye, but with 24 teams, the top 8 teams get those buys. I agree. That's why I like 16. Text message. Hey, Bill, great show. Any chance you could give some tips on smoking a brisket, R&V? Of course I could. I don't have time for that. But the key to smoking a brisket is low temperature and time. Low and slow. That 220, you smoke it for probably 2 or 3 hours at about 180 degrees. And then cook it for about, another 7 to 10, depending on the size of the brisket, at about 225. And somewhere in near the end, foil it up a little bit. You want to put it in that foil for maybe an hour or two, and then the last hour or so, take that foil off. Thanks for the text message. 877-353-0700. Hey, Bill. I'm wondering about how Utah's defensive line is looking this year with both John Henry Daly and Logan Fano both leaving. That's one of my questions. That's why I was bringing that up earlier about the double-digit sack guy. I like Cash Dillon, and I like Lance Holtzclaw, and I like Ethan Day as well. Ethan Day, he had a really good spring. Every practice I went out to, I felt like Ethan Day was making plays. Day makes plays. But what will the production look like? Because in recent years, they've always had that kind of one proven guy coming back, if that makes sense. Like last year, Logan Fano was coming back off injury, but he was a little bit of a proven commodity, and then John Henry Daly just popped. Paul Fitzgerald's another guy to keep an eye on, too. I didn't mention Paul. But Paul's a guy that he was hurt most of last year, too, and I think he could be a guy that comes back and gets in that mix. I think they've got good depth. My question and why I posed it to you guys is, do they have that one dude that's going to be that double-digit dude? Maybe they've got 4 guys that get between 6 and 8, 6 and 9 sacks, and that would be good production, too. Text message from Derek says, hey, Bill, you're the GM of the Jazz. What do you do with number 2 with what we know about the Jazz? Well, I'm assuming we're standing pat, right? I'm going to assume A.J. DeBonsa goes first to the Washington Wizards. I'm taking Darren Peterson second, assuming the medicals all check out, assuming that he's okay medically, that he doesn't OD on creatine like he said he did when he was at Kansas, which, again, the story still feels a little weird to me. I mean, it just does. But whatever. Assuming the medicals check out, I'm taking Darren Peterson and putting him next to Keontae George. And you've got a ball-in-hand guy that is an elite creator, scorer. He's 6'6". He can play ball in hand and be a playmaker at times, but he can get his shot off. He's got an NBA shot. He's 6'6". He can get to the basket, get to the rim. To me, with the front court you have of Jaren Jackson and Lauri Markkanen, you have Keontae George, who's been in that system. I think Peterson would be a natural fit there. We'll talk to Gordy about that. I know there's been a lot of Caleb Wilson love in recent weeks from some of the stuff that I've read. But in a guard league, and you've got a guy that's a legit 6'5", 6'6", who's bouncy, who's a playmaker, who can really shoot it, that's the direction I would go in. I'm not sure where you guys feel about it, what you feel. I know a lot of people in the market love A.J. DeBonsa, and rightfully so. A.J.'s a great player. I just don't feel like A.J. is going to be there for the Utah Jazz, if that makes sense. 877-353-0700 to get you in and on board today here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. We'll talk a little bit about the Jazz and the draft and Game 2 tonight, which you'll be able to hear right here on ESPN 700 between the Knicks and the Spurs. I'm just telling you right now, the Knicks are an absolute machine right now. They are. They have 12 straight wins. Here's I'm going to drop this because Gordy loves facts. I'm going to save this. But they have 12 straight wins. And here's the crazy thing. I told Spence this the other day when I was on with him before game 1. Never in my life have I ever rooted for the New York Knicks. I don't think I've ever really rooted for any New York team in general. I just, not from there, that big city thing. I like this Knicks team. I like Jalen Brunson. I like Mike Brown, their coach. I like Josh Hart. I like OG Anunoby. Karl Anthony Towns always felt like a kind of a goofball, big man who just liked to shoot threes, and he still is kind of that. I just think the pieces fit so very well with this Knicks team. And I don't know what it is about this Spurs team, but I don't find them like a likable group. I don't know what it is. I'm not anti. I've always kind of liked the Spurs in general, but there's something about this team that I'm not drawn to them the way I'm drawn to this Knicks team. Maybe there's just something about Jalen Brunson, the little guy. In real life, he's not a little guy. If you saw him walking down the street, he would look like a relatively bigger guy. But out there, but there's just a toughness about Jalen Brunson that I really like. And I like the way this Knicks team plays. They play hard. And they don't – if Brunson's their best player, Jalen Brunson is probably what? A top – from a talent standpoint, a top 10, 15 player in the league. Yet he's leading them in this group. Karl Anthony Towns, their second best player. Is Karl Anthony Towns a top 20 player in the league? Maybe. OG Anunoby is a really nice piece. Josh Hart. I like the way this team has been put together, and I like the way they play. And that's weird for me to say because I'm not a Knicks fan. But they're fun to watch, and I like their togetherness. And I'm not a fan of the San Antonio team for whatever reason. I don't find them likable. So we'll talk to Gordy about that and the draft and more coming up here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in today. If you want to hit me up on the text line, feel free to do it. 877-353-0700. Text line open to you. Right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Well, I can't fill in for Sean or Spence and not have my good friend of so many years on to talk some ball, and especially when we're in the midst of the NBA Finals and a couple of weeks out from the NBA Draft, which could be as important an NBA Draft as the Jazz have had in decades. That means it's time to bring on the basketball savant, the Mike Brown to my Jalen Brunson, my coach, Gordon Chiesa. How are you, Gordy?
Bill, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Are you doing as well as the New York Knickerbockers are doing right now, Gordy? Because they are doing historically well right now. Can I drop a factoid on you that maybe you know or maybe you do not know?
Yeah, please do.
Because I know you love a good fact almost as much as you love a list, Gordy. The Knicks are a machine right now. As you know, they've won 12 straight games. They've won these 12 straight games by outscoring their opponents by 272 points. Did you know that?
Yes, I did, which is historical.
It is the best 12-game stretch in NBA history. Not just NBA playoff history, Gordy, NBA history. That's amazing.
It's amazing. Also, add to that, as far as calendar, it's been 41 days. And, Bill, the last time the Knicks lost was the first day of the NFL draft of this year, which shows you in context. It's a long time in that funness as far as being a New York Knickerbocker. However, now Bill, tonight, game 2, we'll see.
We were both younger men the last time that the Knickerbockers lost, but gladly we are still both around to talk about Game 2 tonight. What is it about what they're doing right now, Gord? We'll talk about Game 2 in a minute. What is it about this Knicks team? And I said this. I've never in my life rooted for the New York Knicks in anything. I've never found them not my thing, not my team. I am rooting for this team. There's something about this team that I'm drawn to. What is it that's come all together for this team, and they're on this historic run right now?
There's a joy of playing.
Yeah,
they're passing the ball and they're playing help-to-helper defense, and all the roles are defined. And off the bench catalysts, those guys come in the game and they actually really enhance what's going on. And so they're truly a unit, and there's a joyfulness of playing around their star players, and everyone has bought into the system. And that's why it's so much fun to be a Knicks fan right now.
I agree. There is just you can tell when teams are enjoying themselves and having fun, and this team really feels like that. And this is a team effort, too. Jalen Brunson is fantastic, but I don't know that you would call him one of the 10 best players in the league. I mean, he's playing like that, but I don't know if you were picking teams, if he would be one of your first 10 taken. Who's their second best player? Is it Karl Anthony Towns? Is it OG Anunoby? I mean, is it Mikal Bridges? I mean, you go down that list. Most championship teams, Gordy, have two of the best 10 players in the league, or at least one of the best 2 or 3 players in the league. This Knicks team doesn't fit that, but they do fit the definition of a team.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. The second best player is Karl Anthony Towns. What makes him so interesting is that with Minnesota, he was the top dog and was aloof on defense and other intangibles. Once with the Knickerbockers, and most recently the last year or so, when Jalen Brunson has established himself as an absolutely one-man wrecking crew and closer, Karl Anthony Towns has really made that evolution as a player that became even more impactful by accepting his role as the second best player on the team, and now he excels in that. And so, again, he's a double-double player, meaning roughly 20 points a game and 10 rebounds, and now his defense has gotten dramatically better. And the most recent thing right now in this series is that he's accepted the challenge of trying to slow down Victor Wembanyama. In Game 1, he did. So the players accept their role. We left out also Josh Hart.
Yes.
Josh Hart is a tremendous, I call him, he's heart and soul of the Knickerbockers. I call him Sir Mix It Up a lot in the lane. He's always doing something. He can rebound his position. He's a lunch pail player. It's very similar also to OG Anunoby. And he's a guy that most times outperforms his opposition by just hustle plays. But he makes open jump shots, and he makes so many different intangible things that only winning players do.
He's a non-box score player. You cannot look at the box score and see Josh Hart's impact on the game, can you?
No, you cannot. No, it's really unsung. It's that screening action, loose ball. It's that stunting on defense to hold up the shooter. It's running back and trying to get a back tip. These are all the things that winning players have, and they have to be valued. And then in the prism of the NBA Finals, you see how it's more glaring, and that the finals. In the finals, a phenomena happens. You either get exposure or you get exposed. And Knickerbockers right now, from 1 through 9 on the roster, they're absolutely getting exposure.
Well, they also have a group of guys that you have to have. I think Shaq refers to these guys as the others. You have to have a group of others who have to be selfless, even maybe more so than a guy like Josh Hart is. A guy like a Landry Shamet who made a bunch of big shots the other night. Mitchell Robinson is playing with the broken finger. Jordan Clarkson, Jose Alvarado. These guys are all very key to them getting it done.
Yeah, very much. Also, after that, Miles McBride, defensively and offensively. Yeah, the Knick bench right now is played sensational. They're energy sparkers. They come into the game. They make hustle plays. And how do you do that? I call velocity baskets and velocity steals. And they make a lot of U-turn plays where they turn around the possession, where suddenly things happen, they get a steal or a timely three. It U-turns around the fate of the possession and also the most recent pass of the game, and that's when they really perform. And they've done a good job throughout the whole playoff run by the Knickerbockers. And in Game 1, they outplayed dramatically the Spurs bench.
Yeah, now let's be fair here. The Spurs played arguably one of their worst games of the playoffs the other night. They lose by 10, 105-95, but they didn't play. And give credit, too, for the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks played a role in that. But Wembanyama is 6 for 21 in that game. He did not play well. De'Aaron Fox didn't have a great game the other night. So a few shots go here and there, and maybe it's a little bit different outcome, but it didn't. But I want to ask you about Wembanyama because – we've been very quick to anoint him the best player in the NBA, and he's certainly going to get there at some point in time. But I guess my question for you would be, he'll look very dominant in games and in stretches of games, and then we'll also see him fade and disappear or make bad decisions on the offensive end. What do you want to see different from Victor Wembanyama over the next couple of games if the Spurs are going to win this series?
Get more in the paint as far as shooting. So last game he shoots 6 for 21. Only 9 of his 21 shots was in the paint. It was only 43%. So in the regular season, when we all saw what he could do, and also the first rounds of the playoffs, his shooting percentage as far as attempts in the lane was 58%. So Knickerbockers are forcing him away from his natural position, which is what? Inside, outside versus only outside, outside. So you have to be more determined to what? Get into the painted area. Now, as far as how you do it schematically, if I'm the Spurs, I'll be very conscious of running more pick and rolls where it forces him to what? Unless you're wide open for that throwback jump shot, to screen and roll into the lane on a velocity cut to make the player who's going to try to tag him, who's much smaller, take him on. If the coverage recovers on it as far as initial defender, they have a chance to what? Get an automatic post up in the dots. And that's what he's got to try to do, is force himself, not his body, because his body is only lanky, but he's got to have the mindset of getting more paint touches inside. The next part about that is that less dribbling. He gets in trouble when he dribbles the ball way too much. And so if I'm him, I'm going to try to be more. If I'm going to be outside, I'm either going to shoot, pass it, or drive it versus what? Dribble it.
Are the Knicks happy with him taking 9 threes?
Oh, absolutely. They're ecstatic, very much, because that makes their defense more now solid, less compromised. When he rolls to the basket, the defense is compromised. And that's what's so important about it, that offensively for the Spurs right now, you've got to get him more involved as far as getting into the painted area. Again, his body frame doesn't dictate that, but he has to try to do it right now, and that will help his team very much. And with the Spurs also is that they've got to be more patient, either with him or with themselves. So, for example, at the 89 shots they took in Game 1, and remember, they're up 14 points, and the score was tied to start the fourth quarter. And then the Knicks took over the last 5 minutes of that game, led by Jalen Brunson. But part of the reason why is that out of the 89 shots that they took during the game, the Spurs, only 12 of them were under 7 seconds or less. So it's meant that just simply is that Wembanyama and all his teammates, they panicked as far as shooting. They shot way too early in the shot clock versus what? Probing it, driving it, swinging it, and then what? Being in attack mode. And that's how they lost the lead. That's how the Knicks won the game.
Dude, here's an interesting question. If you're the Spurs, De'Aaron Fox has not been great this postseason. He had played 38 minutes the other night, gave you 7 points, and was 0 for 4 from deep, 3 of 13 shooting. Should we see less of De'Aaron Fox and more of Dylan Harper? What do you think?
Yes, very much. More Dylan Harper. Harper's got a winning game, absolutely. And I'm not overreacting to the recent performance by De'Aaron Fox. I'm playing Dylan Harper because he gives you much more defensively, too. He makes more gritty plays, both in offense and defense, and he's willing to get into the painted area and get muddy, I call it, where he forces the defense to body him and collapse on him. So, again, in Game 2, where it's a must-win for the Spurs, I'm going more Dylan Harper. And as far as a must-win, no team in the NBA Finals history has ever dropped the first 2 games at home and have won the NBA championship. So just saying, if the Spurs do lose tonight, Bill, it's never been done before, that loser of 2 games at home have been champions. This is a must-win urgency by the Spurs. And so which means that there's no hard feelings if the Spurs played Dylan Harper 32 minutes a game, only play Fox 18 minutes. Nothing personal.
Which of these teams feels grittier to you?
Knicks.
I agree.
Yeah, Knicks. And it's all part of New York. The grittiness of New York. Bill, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx.
But they play in Midtown Manhattan, though, Gordy.
True. But it's gritty in the Village, though. But it's not gritty in Staten Island. I agree with you. It's not.
I don't think any of those guys are from New York, though, are they?
Yes, they are. There's 2 guys that. Yeah, it's interesting. Someone from New York is going to win the championship. Jose Alvarado went to Christ the King High School.
Okay.
And so he might be a champion. And also from New York is I'm trying to think right here. There's someone on that team from New York. I'm thinking 1 second. That's going to be champions. Oh, Champagne.
Okay.
Julian.
Yeah, he went to St. John's.
He went to St. John's. Also, he went to Bishop Loughlin in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Which is Mark Jackson's school, in case you're wondering.
Gordon Chiesa with us here, the coach on the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in today. All right, before we pivot to the draft for just a minute, who do you got tonight?
Spurs.
Okay.
A hard-fought game to make it 1-1.
1-1 going back to the city.
Back to the city on Monday night. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So it should be a fascinating. Again, the playoffs. There's nothing like it. The intensity, the emotion. You've got to play forward. You cannot play backwards. If you miss a shot, a layup, a bunny, or you commit a bizarre foul, even though it's negative, you've got to get out of it mentally. That next 1 or 2 steps, as far as running down the floor, you've got to mentally retrain your mind to the next play forward. That's all that matters.
One other thought, Gordy. This Knicks team feels to me like that Pistons team that won in, 2004? They had a lot of good players, but not any really necessarily great players, and they played really good team basketball, and they were really gritty. Your guy, Larry Brown's team, do you get those 04 Pistons vibes from this team?
I do, yes. And you're describing there where the sum is greater than any of its individual parts. and that's the Knickerbockers right now. So really, they truly are a team. It's so interesting, in the sense that where New York or L.A., it's always like Showtime, etc., as far as big things. But the Knickerbockers, this version of it is truly like a gritty unit, and it's led by their star players that are willing to dig in, and they've all bought into it, and that's why it's really a fun story so far.
Gordy Chiesa with us. Gord, we're 18 days from the NBA draft, and the Jazz sit at number 2. You've been talking to people. You've been watching tape. You have been grinding. The Jazz at 2. Somebody asked me earlier today if I was the GM what I would do. I'm assuming A.J. DeBonsa goes number 1 at 2. Caleb Wilson's getting a lot of love and steam as of late. Darren Peterson's still there. I have said that if all things are equal and DeBonsa goes first and Peterson's medicals check out, I'm taking him at number 2 to slot him in next to Keontae George to give them a big-time NBA scoring combo guard. What say you if DeBonsa goes 1? What do you do with the Jazz at 2?
I'm taking Darren Peterson also. Absolutely. What I love about him is here's the comparison that I wrote about him. He reminds me of Ray Allen. He reminds me of Devin Booker of the Suns. He reminds me of Stephen Castle of the Spurs. And in yesteryear, he reminds me of Rip Hamilton. So that's who he's a knockdown, unbelievable, pure jump shooter with classic footwork. He's an uncanny driver. He got some wiry toughness. He's a foul generator. And he has that quick burst to the basket to get a shoulder by his defender. And he's enough point guard skills. He could, he's a guard. He's not a point guard. He's more of a two guard, but he can enter the ball. And this guy defensively, he moves his feet. And he can get after it. And he last year with KU, he had 1.4 steals in the game, which is really good. So I love his game. I know there's been some off-the-court things about him. I'm sure everyone's doing the intel, and they'll come to a decision about it. But I'm taking him at number 2 without any hesitation. He should be an all-star type player within 2 to 4 years. That's how talented he is.
Have you heard any conversation that would have the Wizards taking Peterson 1?
No, absolutely not, because AJ's number 1. The top 4 guys are really absolutely incredible players as far as talent-wise, but AJ's number 1, very much. And it's also a fit. I know it sounds weird saying this. The Wizards, it's like they've been off everyone's radar screen. They've had 7 straight losing seasons. So you mentioned the Wizards, people start cringing. Those guys, those chumps, et cetera, et cetera. But here's their starting team if they draft the bouncer and if everybody's head's on straight. So I know that it's an if. Is Trae Young, Dila Coulibaly at 2 as a true guard, AJ the bouncer at small forward, Anthony Davis at power forward, and vastly underrated Frenchman Alexander Sarr. And then a 6th man should be Keyshawn George as a 6th man, and Trey Johnson. So that's really a better team that you can really think of. And so it actually fits. So a small forward, the bouncer being a small forward, it's a perfect talent, which is high, and the fit for the Wizards as they try to, again, go forward with their team.
Okay, if the Bonsa goes 2, who's your pick at 3, Boozer or Wilson? Because as I mentioned, Wilson's beginning to – again, this happens every year. There's a couple of guys that get a little shine a little bit more than others, and Boozer feels like the most stable guy, but people sometimes look for the upside too. Wilson or Boozer?
Boozer, absolute. You're talking somebody, Boozer, who's a rocket Gibraltar as a young guy. He's an average 20 points and 10 rebounds a game. As far as the rest of his career, he's steady. And also he's really a tremendous passer. And so this past year at Duke at a high level, he has 157 assists and only 96 turnovers. Are you kidding me? As far as handling the ball, he knows how to play and that he gets his teammates better. So here's the comp with him. He reminds me of Kevin Love when he was younger. He reminds me of Al Horford when he was younger. He reminds me in the present tense, Paolo Banchero, with the way he scores inside and the way he passes the ball. He reminds me of Alperen Şengün of the Rockets. I love his game. There's no hesitation at all. He's going to be an all-star someday.
NBA draft 18 days away. Coverage right here on ESPN 700. It would not be a Gordy visit with yours truly. We began these lists more than a decade ago. So, Gord, what do you got for me today?
My list today, Bill, is the most career points scored in the NBA Finals by players. The most career points in the NBA Finals career, which means you have to be on a good team and be in the finals many, many times. Here we go. It's only a dozen. Number 12 all-time, Steph Curry scored 928 tallies. Number 11 all-time, Kobe Bryant scored 937 points. Number 10, Magic Johnson scored 971. Number 9 all-time, John Havlicek, 1,020. Number 8, Tommy Heinsohn of the Celts, 1,035. Number 7, Sam Jones, 1,143. Number 6, Bill Russell, 1,151. Number 5, Elgin Baylor, 1,161. Number 4, all-time, Michael Jordan, 1,176 points in the finals for an average of 33.6 points per game in the finals, which is outrageous, best all-time. Number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 1,317 points. Number 2, he plays for the Lakers as we speak right now. He's been in 10 NBA Finals. LeBron James, 1,562 for an average of 28.4 points per game. And the number one player of all time to make points in the NBA Finals is Jerry West. He was in 9 NBA Finals where he lost 8 of them, but it was not his fault. He scored 1,679 points, which comes to 30.5 points per game. What about in jazz basketball? Karl Malone was in 2 NBA Finals for a total of 12 games. He tallied 283 points. Karl averaged in the NBA Finals 23.5 points per game. So we're talking the elite of the NBA Finals. Michael Jordan was the all-time greatest as far as points, as far as per game, 33.6, Bill. Think about it. It's unimaginable.
A lot of Lakers and a lot of Celtics on that list, Gordy.
Yeah, and let's hope that someday there'll be a lot of Jazz guys that someday on that list also.
Be a long ways off, but maybe we can hope. Gord, great catching up with you. You have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Bill. Peace out.
Peace out. Gordon Chiesa with us here today on the Sean O'Connell Show. By the way, if you would like to win some tickets to see a movie, the Scary Movie, coming to theaters this Friday, text movie right now to 33986. Text movie right now to 33986 for your chance to win some tickets to see the latest iteration of Scary Movie. By the way, Gordy brought to you by Aladdin Industries, your Velux dealer. Game 2 of the NBA Finals tonight from San Antonio. Coverage beginning at 6 after Spence's show right here on your home of the NBA Finals. Back with a couple of text messages, leaderboard update. Sly around the corner to talk some college football with us here on a Friday. Bill Riley in for Sean O'Connell on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. No OC today. He's out on assignment. You got Riley in today. Appreciate you guys tuning in wherever you might be. Hope you're having a great Friday today. If you're out and about, feel free, please, to keep us dialed in. If you're traveling today, thank you for tuning in wherever you might be. Travel safely. Looking forward to having you back here very, very soon. And for those of you just kind of chilling out listening, thank you for making me and ESPN 700 part of your Friday. Got an hour left in the show today. We'll have a little Utah football and Big 12 football talk with my good friend and broadcast partner, Stevenson Sylvester, in about 5-6 minutes or so. And then Marcelo Balboa, longtime member of the U.S. men's national team, now a tremendous soccer broadcaster, will be in Chicago for the United States and Germany tomorrow. Will join us coming up at the bottom of the hour with the World Cup beginning a week from today for the U.S. It actually begins a week from yesterday overall. It begins on the 11th. I think Mexico kicks things off down in Mexico, but the United States and Paraguay will play at SoFi next Friday. So anyway, the men and the U.S. men in Germany tomorrow will be heard right here at 12:30 on ESPN 700. Final tune-up before the World Cup begins. Also going on right now, time for a leaderboard update from the Memorial Jacks tournament at Muirfield Village, just outside of Columbus. Your round two leader in the clubhouse, two of them in the clubhouse right now at 8 under par, Ryan Gerard and JT Poston. Poston's still on the course. He's 6 under today. He's 8 under for the tournament. Ryan Gerard, 3 under for the day, 8 under for the tournament. He's in the clubhouse. Both those guys hold a 2-shot lead over Sam Burns at 6 under, Wyndham Clark at 5 under, Shane Lowry, the Steve Bartle lookalike, at 4 under, J.J. Spawn at 4 under, Justin Rose at 4 under, Tommy Fleetwood at 4 under par as well. Rory's at 3 under, Xander Schauffele at 2 under. Utah's very own Tony Finau. Not a good day today for Tony. He was +2 for the day, even par for the tournament as they play on just outside of Columbus at Muirfield Village at Jack's tournament, the Memorial. One quick text message because, well, thank you. I appreciate it. This one in from Texter 4234. Hey, Bill, so great to hear your voice again. Sean does a nice job, but it's just not the same. You're the reason this hardcore BYU fan listens to this station. I appreciate your thoughts and insights. Thanks for the coming back today. Go Cougs. Well, thank you for the kind word, or words, 4234. I also appreciate Sean letting me sit in, and James and Jackie having me back, and my bosses at the U allowing me to sit in from time to time. Yeah, I'll be back probably in a couple of weeks to do another show when Sean either takes a little vacation or has some work away. But thank you guys for listening, and it's just a treat for me to be able to come back and sit in from time to time. I had a lot of sweat equity, sweat equity and blood and tears in this place. I was here for 20 years, so it's great that they'll have me back from time to time. And in 90 days, you'll hear me back here calling a football game. 90 days from today, Utah and Idaho. 7 o'clock up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It's hard to believe, right? 90 days until the season kicks off, inside of 13 weeks. We'll talk a little Utah football coming up with our buddy Stevenson Sylvester. That'll be next right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Final hour on a Friday for the Sean O'Connell Show. Bill Riley sitting in today for OC. Preview the World Cup coming up in about a half hour or so with Marcelo Balboa, former U.S. men's national team member, broadcaster now. U.S. men playing Germany in Chicago tomorrow. Next Friday, they open up World Cup action down at SoFi against Paraguay. 90 days from today, the University of Utah will open the football season at home at Rice-Eccles Stadium against the Idaho Vandals. I will be there, as will our next guest, as part of my broadcast, our broadcast team this year. Again, former Utah great, and of course, my broadcast partner, Stevenson Sylvester, with us here. Sly, what's good?
What's going on, Bill? How are you?
I'm great. Can you believe we're 90 days to kickoff?
Man, you told me 100 days the other day. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, where does the time go? I just remember the season just ended the other day, man. So, yeah, man, with all the news and drama that's going on in the world, it's about time we get some football stuff.
I know. I can't wait. And I think I told you it was 100 days 10 days ago. So here we are. 10 days from now, I'm going to tell you it's 80 days. And then 10 days after that, it'll be 70 days. And I'll give you updates every 10 days until we're getting right up on it. So, all right, we have had the offseason. We've had the regime change. We have had offseason conditioning. We have had spring football. We have had the transfer portal come and go. So what we see now is pretty much what Utah football is going to be with everything that's transpired, Sly, over the last 6 months. What's your read on this Utah football program and where we sit 90 days out?
I love it because Utah's had some commotion going on as far as narratives and stuff like that, but I feel like that's all local. That's all internal stuff. As far as like national stuff, Utah's been kind of like under the radar and just handling business, which is what it should be, right? And we should just be handling business, getting better, getting all the new people ingratiated into the program and make sure they know what's going on and focus on football, because winning games at the end of the day is the only thing that's going to really drive the needle and change people's thoughts or make it go the way you want to, right? You know, when people say you are in charge of what you do. And so one thing that I've always been told when I played is like, you can only control the next down, meaning you can only control the next game. You can't control the 10th, 11th game on the schedule right now in June. What you can control is getting ready for that next opportunity. And so I think that's what Utah's been doing. So I really, really love that. So that's all encompassing and all the things she said of what's transpired here this offseason, from the coaching staff to the spring football to the new incomers coming in. I think they've been on the grind and just pressing forward for that next opportunity, man. So really, really love that. I love the talent that's come in, right? From the spring ball practices that I was able to see and go by and see, the way that they incorporated the new system with McGivern and how those guys are bringing it in and what they've been able to be like, okay, this is what we did last year. Let's keep it the same. I love that. That just means everybody's working together and like, this works. Let's not change it. And so I think our offense is going to be one of the most dynamic offenses in all of college football this year. Absolutely love the way we're set up from the schedule standpoint, from the offensive positioning standpoint, to be able to score a lot of points, no matter who's at quarterback, who's at running back. We got talent all across the board, man, and just really utilizing the personnel is what I'm so excited to see this upcoming fall and how we do that, man. So there's been a lot of things. Love what Scalley's doing, man. If there's ever a regime change and you have opinions about a regime change and you kind of wanted to go a certain way, I think that the way that Morgan has gone about this and the University of Utah has gone about this with Morgan has been stellar. I love the coaching additions that were made. It is very focused and it's very what this program needs right now, and get back on track and to make sure that it is a good transition from the last Coach Whittingham coaching staff, man. So love what's going on. I'm very excited to see what they're able to do here come fall.
So somebody asked me this early in the show today on the text line, and I'll ask you the same question. They said, what's going to be different about Utah football this fall? I'd be curious to see what you think would be different about Utah football this fall.
Well, I think it would be a plan of attack. If anything's different, it's a plan of attack. One thing that I do know, just from my closeness to the program, is how similar Coach Witt and Scalley are in a lot of different ways. right? But I think the plan of it, what will be different is how they go about, attacking the opponent from right out of the gate to kind of what. Like, there's a lot of coaches who are going to be like, okay, I want to have a filling out process, right? It's kind of what I feel about LeBron James, right? He's like, he takes that first game of the playoffs and like, let's fill out how are they planning it? How are they trying to attack me? And then, kind of in a boxing match too. What is this guy's game plan this whole match on how he plans to fight me? Right. And so now I can retaliate. So I'm gathering information as we go as far as I don't think that's Scally's game plan. I think Scally's game plan is like, look, I'm going to hit you where it hurts because I know what you're going to try to do out the rip, and I'm just going to do it better and faster and right out the jump. So I think that Utah football is going to be so aggressive at the start of the gate of the games is what I'm anticipating. We don't really know because we haven't seen the game yet, right? But this is what I think is going to be different is a plan of attack per game going in. And I think that Morgan Scally is going to be on a mission to prove how dominant this program could be against any opponent, no matter how we are. I'm not really worried about the next opponent that's coming out and what they're thinking. And that's what I take away from Coach Whittingham's program. I think he was very adamant about, like, what we do this week is setting up next week and what they're researching and looking at that as far as Scally's like, look, we are a dangerous, dangerous team. It doesn't matter what we do, whether we run the ball this week, whether we pass the ball this week. Whatever we do, you better be ready for it because we can come out with whatever. I think the plan of attack going into games is what's going to be the biggest difference. And I think you're going to see a lot more points scored from Utah, which is something that, we've been asking for years. We've had a couple of years in 2021 where, we were up around that 38 and 45 points a game, and we absolutely love that. And I think that's the type of offense, the type of team that we're going to be this year. And our defense is going to be more putting their ears back and getting after the quarterback because the opponent is going to be so behind the ball. So I think the plan of attack going into games is going to be the biggest difference.
Utah great, and my broadcast partner, Stevenson Sylvester, with us here on the Sean O'Connell Show today. All right, let me throw a couple of questions at you that I've posed on my podcast the last week or two. These are Utah football questions specific to this team this year, and I just get your reaction to these questions that I've asked listeners. So question number one, will Utah have a 1,000-yard wide receiver this year? They've gone 13 years without a 1,000-yard receiver. Drez Anderson was the last. Dizzy Drez was the last one to have a 1,000-yard receiving year. Do you think Utah has a 1,000-yard wide receiver this year?
Yes, and I'm looking forward to it. I think we have a 1,000-yard receiver and another 600-yard receiver to complement. I think Brandon Page is going to be that 1,000-yard receiver. I'm telling you, watching this guy in person, absolutely love his talent. He's so versatile, so strong, and the biggest thing, he's confident. When you have a confident receiver and a confident quarterback, Devin Dampier, he's been in this program, been in this conference, and understands things, and he's very confident. And McGibbon's offense is very similar to the offense that Utah State ran last year. And I think that relationship is marrying up really well between McGibbon and Devin Dampier. And even our backup, Bird Franklin. I think that we just have the talent to make that happen. And when you got a number one guy like Braden Pagan, I'm telling you, I say that because of what I've seen in practice, and I'm anticipating what it'll translate over to. Getting Devin Dampier out of the pocket will eliminate anything like, oh, can we block XYZ? Like, Devin Dampier is dangerous with his legs. So you can't double guys on the back end because Devin will kill you with legs. So you're going to have to play Utah extremely honest. And when you do, that's when guys win those one-on-one battles, that Brandon Pagans win that one-on-one battles. You get Daniel Bray in the slot, and it's extremely dangerous the way Britton Covey was back in the day. And we have these talent across the board from Tyree Scholes and the emergence of Creed Whittemore. You're going to see these guys take shape. And I do think that Brandon Pagan wins 90% of his one-on-one battles just because of his stature, athletic ability, and confidence, man. So I believe Brandon Pagan will be a 1,000-yard receiver this year in this offense.
Okay. Will they have a double-digit sack guy this year?
No. I think they're going to be able to spread the love. I think they're going to have close. Like I told you, Bill, I think Lance Holzkall is my guy. I really love the work that he's been able to do and more of the maturity in his character and the type of person that he is. he loves his craft. He's been dedicating his craft, and that's what I saw this spring is working on the little things, the hand moves, the endurance, as he put on a little bit of weight and strength and all of those things, and that's exactly what we need. But I think that he'll be a disruptor in the backfield to where if he's a John Henry Daly, to where John Henry Daly got majority of his sacks early in the season against some of our non-conference opponents. Maybe we get double digits, but I just see his disruption along with Carson Kafusi in the middle on the same side is going to be absolutely dangerous for the opponent. Carson Kafusi, as a true freshman, was just wrecking shop, and he's just so skilled, and that's just in the bloodlines, man. We just know that. But just those guys will demand attention, and other guys will open up, but they'll get their opportunity. So I think what we're having, instead of double-digit sack guys, I think that we're going to have high sacks between 3 to 4 guys. I think we'll have 3 to 4 guys over 6, 7 sacks this year. And I can't wait for that. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. With the rotation on defensive line, Cash Dillon getting in there, our transfer Ethan Day, he made a lot of noise
in spring.
As well. Confident. Yeah, he did a great job of understanding the defense coming in and being effective, man. So excited to see what he's able to do with the full off season, going into training camp as we head into Idaho.
I agree with you. I think that you will probably see 3, maybe 4 guys that have between about 5 and 8 sacks. I think between Day and Dillon and Holtzclaw and the guy we kind of forget a little bit about is Paul Fitzgerald, who was hurt most of last year, but Paul was a pretty effective player in his first couple of years up at Utah State, and I think a healthy Paul Fitzgerald could be in that mix too. And this sack numbers are great. What's really important are pressures. And if these guys can get, in that neighborhood of 5 to 7 to 8 sacks each, but also really do a good job pressuring, that'll be huge.
Yeah, man, and you can take away those opportunities because when you have those long plays, long balls, and the biggest thing is those. Oh gosh, why am I blasting the name right now? Those max plays, plays over 20 yards. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name.
Chunk.
We used to call it. Chunk plays. You eliminate chunk plays by pressures, right? Pressures. He makes dumb decisions. Turnovers come off of dumb decisions. And you force them to throw the ball short, which means everybody can rally and they don't get much out and you get 3 and outs, right? So pressures, this, as you said, is going to be extremely effective, which is why I love Carson Kafusi's presence, right? Pupu Sepulona as well did a great job last year. We had a lot of fun always saying Pupu's effective today. But I think that those guys had experience last year. They'll get to come in and really tear things up this year and take shape, man. The biggest jump that I think people need to make in their careers are from the freshman to sophomore year. So you got Carson Kafusi and Pupu Sepulona going from freshmen to sophomores and with significant experience last year. So, man, excited about this defense like no other. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. But I think there's going to be a lot of pressures that are going to cause turnovers and a lot of 3 and outs. But, early in that year, last year, we didn't create enough turnovers early. And so I'm hoping we get to the turnover battle from the forced fumbles to the interceptions. Those come early in the season. So when they come late in the season, when we really need them against BYU and Arizona and these games like that we know how to do it. We're comfortable with doing it. And so whenever we need a play, we can get a play out of these guys.
All right. I've looked at the schedule, and it's easy to do this in the offseason, but I think the schedule early for Utah is really positive. You've got the 3 non-conference games all at home against 3 teams that you should beat. I know Arkansas is an SEC team, but they're in rebuild mode after firing their staff midseason. I look at that. And then Iowa State, new staff, 90% of their roster left. Kansas rebuilding at Colorado. Houston's in there tough, but I really see a world, Sly, where Utah could be 8-0 heading into the BYU game. And that November stretch, to me, is kind of where the season is decided, kind of your fate of the season with BYU, Arizona, and TCU, that stretch of games, 2 of the 3 games being on the road. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you think the schedule sets up for Utah?
Schedule sets up beautifully. I mean, look, our 2 of our 3 hardest games are at home. from BYU at home, Houston's going to be at home, and Arizona's going to be away. We have 7 home games this year.
Yep.
I think our schedule sets us up to be extremely, extremely beneficial, which is crazy. I'm looking at all the schedules throughout the conference of who's going to be, top to your point. I think there's only going to be 6 real threat teams this year from Arizona, BYU, Houston, Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Utah. And we have the hardest of those 6, which I don't think our schedule is that hard. But, it all depends on where the games fall. Where is it going to be at home? All of these different factors from, how long we've been from the bye week. All those things come in. And our schedule is great. Texas Tech has the easiest cake schedule, honestly, for me, which is whatever. You got to play the teams on your schedule. Hopefully there's a surprise team that on paper doesn't look good right now, but turns out to be better and challenges Texas Tech down the road. But right now, their only hard game is going to be with Arizona at home. But Utah's going to be in that conversation. BYU has a couple hard games. Notre Dame's not going to really matter, but they got Arizona at home and then at Utah. So I think this year is going to come down to the wire again, just like last year is going to be the last week of the season, and somebody's going to have to make do with what happens then as far as who's going to be in that championship game. It's going to be a very tight race from a lot of different teams, but I think Utah is set up perfectly. Again, the focus right now in June is not November. It's about that first game and getting together, and that's what Utah needs to do. And we can really worry about all those things, but it's all about momentum, as you know. Going into the next game, we had some trouble at the end of the season last year, but we were such a talented team that we fought through that. From that atrocious defensive performance we put up at Baylor to that terrible game we put up against Kansas State last year. We did not end the season great as a team. Even though we won those games, we did not end the season great. So momentum is going to be huge when we go into that BYU game, when we go into that Arizona game, right? And so really looking forward to how this team takes shape and takes on their opponents week to week. But right now, we are set up to, yes, be 8-0 heading into BYU. And, we win that game at home. We're now 9-0 going to Arizona. And we could possibly head into a really, really good year. Again, another double-digit win year for Utah football, which is great for a first-year coach in Morgan Scott.
Well, if they do that, they'll be in position to make the college football playoff. And I wanted to ask you as we wind things down, college football playoff, a lot of talk about the format in recent weeks. It's currently 12, which I don't mind. I think the 12-team thing has been really good the last 2 years. But the powers that be in the different conferences want to expand this thing. Everybody but the SEC and ESPN want to move it to 24 teams. I myself would love to see it go to 16 teams because it's more money, sure, but I don't think after you get beyond 16 teams, Sly, really anybody's in the mix to win the thing. What's your read on the playoff format, where it's at now, and where you'd like to see it go, or maybe you'd like to see it stay at 12?
I mean, the 12 was a huge adjustment from 4, right?
Right.
How many times have we argued that 4 was done? I mean, even before that, just the people determined that there was 2, right? It sucked. But I like the 12-team playoffs. I do agree it needs to be more. But everything you do, it's just like being in charge of anything. You're not going to make everybody happy, right? I definitely think that even the NFL, there's guys who don't make the playoffs that you feel like was rolling with momentum at the right time, and because of technicality, they didn't end up making the playoffs. And so you're not going to make everybody happy, but I do agree expanding it past 16, you're going to kind of get into no man's land. 16 is great, right? Because I think anything past 16, there's notable losses that prove that they should not be in, right? Last year, Utah, we had BYU and Texas Tech as losses, which are great. Both of those teams and the BYU only had one loss or to one team that was ranked top in the country. Why didn't they have the chance over some of these other schools? There were so many different narratives. And then you had Miami, who was scraping at the bit, but they ended up making it all the way to the championships. So, I mean, I think when you get to 16, you're able to will it out. So I really like the 16-team model. But again, we're going to have a team that's on the cusp of 17 that felt like they should have been in at the end of that too. So it'll be a forever ending battle, but I do like where we're going with making sure more teams have the ability to get to the championship game and make that happen. And I think by going to 16, we'll be able to do that.
Well, the only real reason to go to 24 is the amount of money it would generate, because you're not 24 teams.
Which is a lot of people's deal.
Well, no, and I get. I'm not so naive to think that I don't know what the money part of it is, because the best programs, the worst programs, everybody in between, everybody still needs money. Even the ones that are the best funded still can use. Everybody can use more money. But 20, that's the only reason to do it, because when you would add those additional 8 more teams from 16, I don't think in the real world, Sly, any of us think that any of those 8 teams beyond 16 would have a legitimate chance to win 4 or 5 games and win the championship. At 16, I still think that there's a chance. Let's just say it was 16. Last year, both Utah and BYU would have made a 16-team field. Texas would have made it. Notre Dame would have made it. I think you could do that. Teams 22, 23, 24, they're in. Maybe they'd win a game. Maybe they would win 2, but the odds of them winning the overall championship are pretty remote.
Yeah, and then you get into the aspect of wanting to include the G5s and them having performance the way James Madison played against Oregon, right?
Right.
And so it's just like, is that totally necessary, or should we have included the Texases? Should we have included, the Utahs and the BYUs? And so there's going to be people who aren't going to make it because you have to have those other guys. So again, somebody's going to be left out each and every year, unfortunately, to do that in all of this, because you expanded, a lot more teams have the opportunity. It does make things more exciting, though. You get teams who aren't trying to throw in the towel around week 9 and 10 because they're out of the mix. You get a lot more people who have the ability to get into that playoffs, and so college football will always be interesting, heading into the end of the season and championship weekend and all these other things. And so I think whatever you do, you create more possibilities for us all to watch football, which is what we love. And some of us to watch our favorite teams, right? You expand that, we give our favorite teams more opportunities to play another game. I'd love to see Utah play another game last year.
I'd love to have you and I broadcast another game.
Yeah. Exactly, man. So, yeah, I love it. I think they're moving towards it to getting it right. And hopefully there's going to be a foundation set somewhere where we can keep that for at least a couple of years.
Hey, Sly, thanks, my man. 90 days. Talk to you soon.
All right, brother.
There he is, Stevenson Sylvester, part of the broadcast team, one of the Utah greats, and glad to have him on board here on the program today. On a Friday, 90 days out to kickoff. Derek the mailman, checking in. Hey, Derek. Said, hey, Bill, checking in as usual. Great episode of the Crimson Corner this week. By the way, CP3, such a dynamic personality, really fun to listen to. Great job, old friend. Thank you for listening, Derek. Clark Phillips III, my guest on this week's Crimson Corner. Get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We're going to talk some World Cup next with Marcelo Balboa as the United States plays Germany in a tune-up and then opens a week from today right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, we're less than a week away from the World Cup beginning. It actually begins next Thursday, the 11th. The United States opens up World Cup play a week from today at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles against Paraguay. They have their final World Cup tune-up tomorrow in Chicago against Germany. That game will be heard right here on ESPN 700 tomorrow at 12:30 Mountain Time. And our next guest is in Chicago to cover it. Former member of the U.S. men's national team, soccer broadcaster and friend of the program and friend of mine. We did a few games together back in the day. Marcelo Balboa with us here on ESPN 700. Cello, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're a week away. What are you expecting?
I know. Oh, Lord, I expect the hype to get better this week. You know what I mean? It's been kind of subdued a little bit. I'm waiting for for now that all the teams are getting into the U.S. to you can feel the vibe, you know what I mean, of a World Cup.
My expectations were tempered and maybe a little low prior to last Saturday or last Sunday when the United States played Senegal. And I feel like, Cello, I finally saw some glimpses of what this team could be. And against a World Cup quality club, because obviously Senegal's in the Cup as well. So you tell me where you sit today, a week out from your expectations about this particular squad.
Listen, because they've gotten a few bad results, our expectations should drop. We know what this team has. We know what they're capable of. So my expectations never dropped. Even though they lost to Belgium, they lost to Portugal, my expectations will always be the same. This is a team that needs to get to the quarterfinals. Simple as that. After years and years of working together, 90% or 80% of the squad is still together. They're playing in some of the best leagues in the world, or the best leagues in the world. So, you know what I mean? After getting the result against Senegal, a good 45 minutes, and you put 10 new bodies in, it makes it difficult. But my expectations never drop for this team. I mean, just like Argentina or Brazil, when you go into a World Cup, even though you have a loss or two, their expectations don't drop to not winning the World Cup. You know what I'm saying? So we'll always judge Pochettino on these next 3, 4, 5 games, however far the U.S. gets.
Oh yeah, you are what your results say you are. That's for sure, and that's fair. You played at home. You were a member of the '94 team that got to play in the United States. What difference does that make playing in front of, again, mostly home crowds, being in your country, playing in your time zones? How much of an advantage is that for this team?
Listen, it's a huge advantage for Mexico because they're playing in the altitude. It's a huge advantage for Canada because they know the stadiums. They're at home. They have their fans. They have their support. They have their rooting sex just like we do. We've got our American Outlaws. We've got family, friends, Americans who want to see this team do well. So it's different for these kids. They've played in big games already. They play in Champions League, Euro. So, you know, the only difference is you're at home now. The expectations are high. This is a group that can take – we have an MLS. People can see it, but this group can take the next step that should be push the soccer to a bigger global stage where people are respecting us. Because if you still go to England, people still give you a hard time about being an American and playing in soccer. We don't have any world superstars or Ballon d'Or winners. So I think this could take another big step in the world of football.
What was that like for you and your teammates to don that jersey with the USA on it and to play on home soil when you stepped on that field for the very first time in a World Cup?
Hold on. Oh, my Lord. There's a protest going on in the hotel. Oh, my Lord. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, my Lord.
For the United States and Germany as they play at Soldier Field at 12:30 Mountain Time. And then, of course, I think he's going to be Mountain Time. And then, of course, I think he's going to have a role with the Spanish-speaking broadcast for the World Cup as well throughout. I don't know if it's just the United States or if it will be on part of all their Spanish-speaking broadcasts. But hope that he calls back here momentarily to fill in a few more details because I want to pick his brain just a little bit. The United States plays in Group D. If you're not familiar with who the United States has in Group D, it's it's a good group, but as Cello said, it's one they should advance out of. They open up play with Paraguay. They also have Australia and Turkey. It's a winnable group for the United States. Of those teams, Turkey is probably the most difficult challenge. That, I believe, is who they play last. And my expectation is much the same as Cello's, a quarterfinal appearance. I think you get out of your group. I think they win Group D. I think you get a win in your first game of the knockout stage, and then you advance on to the quarterfinals. So we'll see if they're able to do that. It's as I said, last week was, to me, maybe the best news you could have gotten. They played very well against Senegal. Senegal is in the World Cup as well. They're one of the best African nations. And for the first 45 minutes of that match, or maybe I'll say for the first 43 minutes of that match before they conceded the goal, I think it was in about the 43rd minute, late in the first half, they dominated. Christian Pulisic looked like Captain America. They got great play out of the midfield. They were solid in back. I would say that if you have Chris Richards, you're going to be in good shape if you're the United States. But we'll see. The midfield feels a little thin, but if Tyler Adams stays healthy, if Weston McKennie stays healthy, if you can get a little bit of magic out of a Gio Reyna, I like the way their midfield is put together, and I like some of their attack. I like a lot of their attacking options as well. So I have high hopes for this U.S. men's national team as they get ready to play and begin World Cup action next week. And again, I'm not sure how much either side will play tomorrow, how much we'll see starters, because, again, while you want to get in good form, you want to limit your risk of injuries a week out from beginning. So they'll play Germany tomorrow and go from there. Got a text from Balboa, and he just shot me a video of apparently the protesters in his hotel lobby. So I'm not sure if we're going to get him back or not, but he can call back if he so chooses, and if he can get to a quiet spot. So Chris Richards, I'm reading from earlier today, will not be in the lineup tomorrow. You could make a case that Chris Richards is as important as anybody for the United States. He's center back and would be an anchor on the back line, a back line that looked shaky last week. Maybe it was the way they were put together in the lineup. Maybe it was the form they were in, but they didn't look great. And I'm not sure the United States has a great goalkeeper right now either. I think they have solid options, but nothing great. It's unlike the days where you went from guys like Tim Howard and Casey Keller and others, where you always felt like the United States had a fighting chance because of their goalie. The goalkeeping is good, not great, but good. But you'd like to think that line in front of them is good, so we'll see how they play as well. But that's the United States and Germany. We'll have that match for you right here on ESPN 700 tomorrow, starting at 12:30 from Soldier Field in Chicago. And then they open a week from today at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles against Paraguay. That's a 7 o'clock start time, Mountain Time, next Friday against Paraguay. And like I said, my expectation is winning Group D, a win, and then into the knockout stage you go. We'll see how that goes. By the way, if you would like to win tickets to see the Smashing Pumpkins, they're going to be at the Delta Center on October 29th. By the way, our limited World Cup talk with Marcelo Balboa, brought to us by our friends at Beer Bar, where they have all the World Cup matches, all the Real Salt Lake matches, all the soccer you could ever want. It's a great location to have a beer, get together with friends, but watch great sports, including the World's Game, soccer, all throughout the next month during the World Cup. All right. If you would like to win those tickets to see Smashing Pumpkins, tell me on the text line right now how many in a row the New York Knickerbockers have won heading into Game 2 tonight. How many games straight have the Knicks won in a row heading into Game 2 tonight of the NBA Finals? Text line's open to you at 877-353-0700. That's again 877-353-0700. How many straight games have the Knickerbockers won heading into tonight's game 2, which, by the way, you'll be able to hear here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Pregame at 6 and a 6:30 start time between the Knicks and the Spurs. Take our final timeout, come back on the other side, set things up with a little crosstalk next here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Did we get a winner on those Smashing Pumpkin tickets, James? Because that's the Smashing Pumpkins we just played coming in. By the way, the answer was 12. They've won 12 straight games coming in. And the unbelievable stat, though, is they've won by a margin of 272 points, which is an all-time record in the history of the NBA. playoff or regular season over a 12-game streak. Nobody's ever won by more points. I was ready to heap all sorts of praise on the Knickerbockers, as I did the other day when I joined him on his show with Spence Checketts on Crosstalk, presented by Advanced Window Products. And no Spence. I get Porter, which is great because I love Porter Larson, who's in here. He's going to be filling in for Spence, but no Spence today. But you're a Knicks fan too, right?
Yeah, Knicks fan, diehard Knicks fan. Not the connections that the Checketts have with the
And
Garden.
you won't be going to Game 4 either.
I don't get to go schmooze up the celebrities at the Garden, but I am a Knicks fan.
Is this the first time in years that any one of your teams has been worth a damn in anything?
This is the only time outside of the Mets and your Royals in 2015.
Yeah, so like a decade, because you're a Cowboys. Your fandom is all over the place. You're a Knicks fan, a Mets fan. Weird, because you never lived in New York, but that's okay. Cowboys fan, and you don't have a hockey team. You're probably a Mammoth fan.
Right.
In hometown, me too. I didn't grow up with a hockey team, so I'm on board with the Mammoth.
I'm still learning that game, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick a team before you really know the sport.
Is there another team I'm missing? Is there a calf roping team you're a fan of? Is there a rodeo team?
I'm a big rodeo guy.
I know you are.
The Wright brothers, the Fields, who are hometown guys with me. I was a big Fred Whitfield fan growing up.
Colton Swan,
of course.
Rodeo guy.
Bulldogger. He's more roping now, so he's not.
Yeah, he's trying to get off the tough stuff because he's getting older now. He doesn't want to break anything.
But I mean, almost any sport. I'm a big tennis guy, so I'm enjoying Roland Garros.
Although all the names have kind of been eliminated from Roland Garros,
which I don't hate.
No.
A lot of times, I quite like the underdog story. Flavio, number 10 in the world, is now in the final. That'll be fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, as a Knicks fan, that's where my energy's focused.
I mean, where are you on this? I mean, can you believe this is happening? I mean, they look like a team. I mean, they're a team, and I made this comparison to Gordy earlier. They remind me of the Pistons, the 04 Pistons.
A little bit.
Really good collective team, no transcendent superstar. Jalen Brunson kind of playing the Chauncey Billups role of sorts. Then you've got some other guys playing the Rip Hamilton role. I don't know that they've got a Ben Wallace on the team.
No.
Does that make sense?
They don't. I wish they did. We're going up against Victor Wembanyama. That would be fun.
Karl Anthony Towns actually showing some pulse defensively, trying to get out and guard Wemby.
He's been great. I'll tell you what, although they don't have that transcendent superstar, they do have the second highest payroll in the NBA. I think they have a really deep, really versatile roster that can beat you in a multitude of different ways.
And they've got a bunch of bench guys that don't mind just being bench guys and playing really hard.
And although maybe not finals experience, half of their starting roster won a national championship together. They've won before.
Yeah.
And they know how to
Villanova.
Win. So I actually have been fairly confident in this Knicks team, whereas usually I am going into the games just hoping that they don't embarrass themselves, right? It's very different feeling being a Knicks fan and watching what they're doing right now. Not only the best 12-game span by a team in NBA postseason history we're currently on, but the second best 12-game span earlier in the playoffs, starting in the first round. Those both belong to the Knicks. This is a team that is playing as good of basketball when you need to be peaking as I've seen in a long time.
Here's the weird thing, too. I'm rooting for the Knicks. I've never in my life rooted for the Knicks. I don't root for really any New York teams, Midwest guy. I don't root. But I find the Spurs, this is weird, I find them unlikable. There's something about the Spurs I don't like. Okay. I don't know what that is. I don't know. And there's something about this Knicks team that I like. I don't know what it is because I'm not a New York guy, but there's something about Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns doesn't seem as goofy as he used to be. Like when he was with the T-Wolves, he always kind of came off as a goofy guy that just liked to shoot threes and didn't really give effort all the time. I don't know. I like Mike Brown, too. I like Mike Brown.
The way they play, I mean, you watch Josh Hart, who could care less if he scores a point, but a loose ball or a rebound, free, up for grabs, he will jump off the top rope essentially, like he's one of the Hardy brothers to get a loose ball. And to me, it's the best thing about a player is when they have that type of attitude towards the game. And he's not the only one. Bridges the same way. Like they are a likable unit. And for me, teams usually love and fans around the country usually love to cheer against the Knicks, against the Lakers. To see what feels like a lot of people on our side is pretty cool.
By the way, your co-host today, filling in, just rolled her eyes and kind of flared up her nose.
Are you not
and
ready?
Gave a thumbs down. Sarah Todd is sitting in with Porter today. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Bill. It's great. I didn't know I was going to see
I know.
you.
I didn't know I was going to see you. I didn't know I was going to see Porter either. So this is great.
Sports Writer of the Year.
Again.
Two-time.
Again.
3-time.
One of these days,
Sportscaster of
Porter
the
will
year.
get you on that list.
I'm just happy
Welcome.
to be in
Great
the
to
room.
see you. You're not rooting for the Knicks.
No. it's so funny because I'm in this moment learning that Porter is a Knicks fan.
Oh, you didn't know this?
No.
Oh, yeah. He's got this weird sports fandom that goes all over the
Which is-
country.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with broadening out your sports fandom from like the geographic region that you live in. But
It doesn't change. That's the good thing. I'm not like a
that's
fair
great.
weather fan.
Great, sure. But it's just such a fan thing to, and like I relate to this as a fan of teams, right?
Well,
But, like,
who's wearing a Liverpool jersey
yes,
right now?
I literally have a Liverpool tattoo on my arm.
Well,
Like,
that's better even.
I get it.
That's fandom.
yeah. But to say like our team has the best 12-game span, like to bring it down into like moments of that, and then also be like, no, I promise that this version is likable, you guys. Like people are liking us this time. No, they're not.
More than usual. That's all I'll say.
Some of them are. I don't know. I just think Wemby's hilarious. I love that he leans into being a heel while also leans into being like the soft nerd. And I love it. I want the 22-year-old to win.
Okay.
And I find the Spurs likable as well. So it's one of those finals where I'm like, this is great. I'm not like actively rooting against a team because they've won the last 3 titles or they're there every year or they just signed an MVP after winning 73 games. Like there's not a as Sarah said, there's not like a true heel in this. I think a lot of basketball fans just like the way these two teams play and watching them do that.
I'm really rooting hard for Harrison Barnes.
There we go.
I had forgotten Harrison Barnes played for the Spurs until he made a couple of random playoff appearances, and I was like, oh, yeah. Harrison Barnes is a Spur. His line was not great the other night.
No, and it's interesting. The Spurs now, after one game, I think the script has been kind of flipped where everyone coming into the series is like, what do you do with Wemby? How do you oppose that? How do you defend that? How do you score on that? And now people are wondering, like, the onus seems like it's more on the Spurs what to do on the wings and how they actually counter what the Knicks did in game 1. And that seems like a good place to be. You've neutralized home court advantage now. And now it really does become an interesting competitive series. And well, I guess we'll see how it goes.
Game 2 tonight at pregame at 6 when you guys wrap up.
Right
here on ESPN 700. U.S. men's national team game with Germany tomorrow as well. And then tomorrow night a little hockey. So
the friendly is that that's on our station too?
It's at 12:30 tomorrow. Not a friendly. Don't call them friendlies. International games before World Cups are not friendly.
Fair enough.
But I'm not sure how either team plays tomorrow because as much as you want to be in form,
right,
you're also a week away from starting the most important tournament that plays every 4 years. And as I say, Chris Richards is not playing for the U.S., which isn't great. So what are you guys talking about today?
Obviously, the NBA Finals Game 2. We will, as Sarah has covered really well over the last couple of weeks, talk a lot of NBA draft, Jazz, DeBonsa, Peterson, Boozer, whatever it may be.
Caleb Wilson.
I love Caleb.
I love him too.
I'll be honest with you.
He's a good player.
I think that the first 2 picks are going to be AJ, Darren, very likely. But I also wouldn't be surprised if 2 through 4 alternate and flip in any which direction. If it goes Wilson, Peterson, Boozer, Wilson, Peterson, I wouldn't be real surprised if it goes any order in those 2 through 4.
You'd be surprised if Peterson went lower than 2?
Only because of, I guess, what we saw as questions about him through the year.
Yeah, I think if medicals check out and he's not some sort of creatine addict, as he seemed to say he was, which that just can't be true.
Well, and that's part of why is like we still kind of have questions about that. And
but Wilson Boozer, the pick at 3 is going to be interesting because I think a lot of people, Sarah, feel like Wilson's ceiling might be higher than Boozer's. Boozer's feels like a safe pick. You kind of know what you're getting. Going to be a good pro, but maybe Wilson's got a higher ceiling but lower floor.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to describe Boozer is that he might have the lower ceiling, but he has the highest floor, I think, of like the top 5 at least. He's an analytics darling. He's incredibly efficient. He's a really, really safe bet. But the other guys look like they have the potential to be like generational.
Right.
Cam Boozer might be the best player in the draft right now.
Right.
But when you're projecting forward, that's where you're like, where do we go? And AJ obviously has a really high ceiling. So
Also the team you go to.
Yeah.
And what's around you and how they're running, things like that.
Fit and scheme.
Sarah and Porter coming up next. I've got to fly. You guys enjoy your afternoon. Enjoy your weekend. They'll take you home. And thanks to Sean for letting me sit in today. This is ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.